spins a web any size. Catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong?
Hello and welcome to Amazing Spider-Man Classics in association with SpiderManCrawlspace.com. This is the one and only podcast that takes you through every Spider-Man book ever published, plus every guest appearance and cameo we can find from the beginning. My name is John Wilson, and this is episode 36 of the show. With me in the studio are Josh Bertoni.
Bonsai.
And Don Grant.
Hola, señoras and señoritas.
And today we are going to be talking about two Spider-Man books, issue 48 of his own title, and a guest shot in Daredevil 27. Plus, like, another teeny tiny cameo, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Before we get into the books, though, I want to remind you that Amazing Spider-Man Classics is brought to you by Roll2Play at www.roll2play.com, your online source for games and gaming accessories. Now, in addition to all the fine games you can get for yourself and your family, they also have a program going right now called Games for Grunts. If you want to send some games over to our men overseas, when placing an order, you can add the special code GAMES4GRUNTS at the payment screen. Your purchase is discounted 20%, you don't pay any shipping charges, and your game purchase is added to others and taken to a local drop-off to be sent to our troops overseas. So go to Roll2Play, buy some games for our troops overseas. That's GAMES4GRUNTS, all one word, spelled with the number 4, just as Roll2Play is all one word, spelled with the number 2. The last couple of episodes we did were special episodes about the Spider-Man reboot, and I hope you enjoyed them. When this episode is being recorded, we still haven't hit August 31st, but by the time it's released, the new DCU will be well into its first month, so I hope you're surviving, and God, I hope the books are good. I really do.
I'll be reading, John will be reading, Josh will be ignoring.
I'll be checking in on it, but my investment won't be there. People from the future, is it pandemonium or is it the new? I guess it wouldn't be the golden age because.
What do we call this?
I don't want to call it the digital age because that sounds like so stupid.
I don't even refer to like modern DC as any sort of like metal anymore. I think of Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Post Crisis, New Earth, and New 52.
It's the rubber age.
I was about to say the new age, but if it's New 52, yeah, that's called. I'm gonna probably call it the new age, but somebody on the internet will probably give it a name.
But like, okay, but what are people going to call it 30 years from now? They're not going to say, "Oh, remember the new age."
That's what we still call the 70s.
It's the rubber age because always rare rubber.
That was back in like I don't know when rubbers were made, I guess.
Well, I don't know. Okay, let's name an element. Come on, guys, we got important work to do. It's the glass age,
the emerald age, or the diamond age, or the insert Pokemon game here age.
It's the Marvel age of comics, but it's the new DCU, so I don't know what that means.
You open up the books and they're all Marvel books.
Yeah, DC. You know, they made a gutsy move. They announced that that for the month of October, all their books are going to be getting the number 2.
Rags Morales got Jack Kirby to substitute for him on 5 pages.
Well, what?
It's
I know what you mean.
Before we get to the books, we do have some emails we would like to read. The first I'm going to read is from The Gnome. He says, "Hello, gang. The Parma Gnome checking in. Some overdue thoughts on a great episode." This email is from April 24th, Parma Gnome, so even though your thoughts might have been overdue for issues 33 and 34, we are overdue in reading your email. So apologies. He says, "Does anyone have any idea when issue 33 was being called the best Spidey story ever? I remember my uncle telling me how great that issue was back in 1968.
Whoa.
I don't know that I have any information beyond that.
When it was being called, the letters are. I remember the letters being pretty positive, but I don't know. Was that an 80s and 90s thing? With stories like that, it's always in retrospect to whether they get high praise or not. Not always at the time.
Right. I mean, it's It's gone down as being super iconic, but I imagine that that's partly because everyone loved it at the time.
Right.
He goes on to say, very puzzling to me is why Doc Ock undertook the guise of the Master Planner. Could he possibly have thought that that was a name that would be taken on a more serious level? Well, his name was Dr. Octopus.
In comparison, yes.
I was actually thinking about that today, how really offbeat and silly that name is for anybody to assume for themselves, whether for heroic or evil purposes. Dr. Octopus? I mean, really?
Of course, you're completely at the mercy of Dr. Octopus. 90s show, how we love you. See, I like how that's like, it's really hard to like do that in a modern day like thing, and I like how in Spider-Man 2, like you have Jonah, like, you know, well, Jonah doesn't come up with the name, Hoffman comes up with the name, like, who always like enters from like stage left or right, you know, like out of nowhere, but and Jonah like takes the credit and he says, a guy named Otto Octavius, you know, attaches limbs to himself. What are the odds?
And then he says Doc Ock. I remember Jonah saying that because he puts his hands in the air. Doc Ock. It's possible that the Master Planner was not going to be Doc Ock at first. Stan might have thought that one masked villain that no one knew the civilian identity of was too much. The Harry Urkel comparison was great. Did the Goblin do that? Made me laugh out loud. I don't think Harry was going to be the college equivalent of Flash, more like the wisecracking Reggie Mantle. I don't know Reggie Mantle.
Reggie's from Archie.
Okay.
Reggie's a character in Archie. He's kind of like the way that Flash and Peter's relationship becomes in the Romita days. Like, Reggie and Archie are friends, but Reggie's a jerk, and the characters always like talk about, boy, isn't Reggie a jerk? Reggie's very like selfish and greedy, and
he's also the rival to Veronica's affections, I think.
Yeah, he's Archie's rival for Veronica's affections, but he'll also date Betty sometimes. Like, because everyone dates everyone in Archie. You know, like Reggie will. Like
why do we know this?
Dude, I've read a share of Archie. You know, like I'm not ashamed.
But I'm like, wait. We're talking about Archie now. It's just funny.
Well, like, he said Reggie Mantle. I mean, and again, you can't talk about the Romita era on a podcast without mentioning Archie in at least like a few episodes.
Yeah, they're very, very comparable, hilariously so.
He says, on the subject of Roy Thomas, I don't think Marvel needed saving when he took over for Stan. I don't think Marvel had anyone other than Roy who could write in a Stan style and was perfect to step into Stan's role for the 70s. Scott Gardner mentions that Roy saved Marvel with Star Wars, but I believe it was Roy who took Conan to Stan, thus ushering in the House of Ideas era for Marvel. Those are two very different years. I would believe that both are entirely possible, because Conan was 1970, right? 1970, 1971. And then Marvel Star Wars was 1977. It could be that both eras, the company gained some serious cash from those two series starting.
I've seen it been said by a few people that work at Marvel in different interviews that like Star Wars absolutely saved Marvel, like that it would.
Yeah, when Scott said that, it was not news to me. I've definitely heard that, but I think that Conan probably helped as well.
Which
just in a different era.
Oh, yeah. The thing that frustrates me about the whole like Star Wars saving Marvel thing, because it was like, I think I remember even reading one book that it was like the best-selling Marvel comic since the Golden Age. In all these Marvel like history books that I read about like Marvel's history and like, you know, different stuff and like different year-by-year things, like I have that 70 years of Marvel comics thing that came out a few years ago, like they do not mention Marvel's Star Wars series. And while it's not set in the Marvel universe, I think that it was like, you know, I think it's important.
I do have the Marvel sales figures of each year, like each year what the average was for that year of their monthly sales. And in 1977, they had a peak that was higher than any year since 1971. So I think that our theory that I just pulled out of my butt a second ago actually has some merit. 1971 has a peak that then with Conan coming out, it then slumps down and then peaks again in 1977 with Marvel Star Wars. But then it slumps right down again and continues to slide until 1980 to 81 looks like the lowest period, and then it starts crawling back up in the 80s. So Parmenome, I think it's both. I think it is Conan and Star Wars. But anyways, he finishes by saying the Richard Pini letter in 34 might be the co-creator of the ElfQuest comic in the 80s. Take care, Bill the Amazing Parmenome. I don't know ElfQuest beyond the covers that I always saw at the bookstore every time I looked for comics in the early 90s. So, yeah, that could very well be him. I just don't know.
Let's hope so.
And then...
From Marriage to Mephisto. Hi, guys. Just heard the From Marriage to Mephisto episode of...
From Crisis to Crisis.
Good times, good fun. Have to wonder how you'll top it next year. I should mention that this is an email that he sent to both Amazing Spider-Man Classics and From Crisis to Crisis. So if you want to know how Mike and Jeffrey will top it next year, ask Mike and Jeffrey, which is what he did. The show proves that a Marriage to Mephisto podcast would be perfectly viable in concept. Of course, from 1994 to 1996, it would basically become a Clone Saga podcast, and we already have Clone Saga Chronicles, but whatever. And I say there's lots of podcasts that cover, and this is me talking now, commentary, there's lots of podcasts that cover the same ground. Like, it's inevitably going to happen. Like, if you're podcasting about something, chances are somebody's reviewing those same things or is going to. Just, make it unique and make it the style of your show. And it could be a good supplemental thing. Anyway, and then but back to his email. Maybe ASM Classics will make it up to 1987 naturally. We can't even leave the 60s. Are you kidding me?
We're barely in 1967.
Yeah. Gosh darn it, that's 20 years from And he goes on to ask Michael Bailey a question, which I'll include here for the purpose of chronology. I felt that you can make life easier on yourself by spending less time adding in sound clips and other edits, but they were totally worth it here. The 2 Spider-Man theme songs brought a smile, and I really got a kick out of the Spider-Fans scene Sandras and sound bites. Okay, well, that's a really good thing that you told me, but I'm too busy right now starting 3 simultaneous podcasts to reply to it. I'll see you in 2012. Hi, Rachel.
I gotta go.
Rest of the email. What was the funniest thing to me was how I keep figuring you would all make a bunch of jokes and shoehorn in one more Day Revision references or something, but no. Most of this was a reasonably straightforward discussion of the comics at hand, and back issue fan that I am, I was right there with you. Happy April Fools, Scott Madman Madsen.
Scott, I don't know if you're listening to Amazing Spider-Man Classics on a regular basis. If you are, please write in again. I would just love to know if you're out there. We had our own April Fool's plans that kind of fell through, and we may revive them for next year. I haven't decided yet, because if you announce what's going to happen ahead of time, then it's not really April Fool's joke. So all of you out there, next time it's like March 15th or March 30th or whatever, don't ask what we're doing for April Fools. Either we'll do something fun or we won't, but we're not going to tell you what it is beforehand. But anyways, we were happily invited onto the April Fool's episode for From Crisis to Crisis, and that was a lot of fun. If you'd never checked that episode out, I strongly encourage you to do so.
Didn't we do those in the same night, too?
Yeah, we did. One after another.
We did our recording in the afternoon, and it died, and we were sad, and we had a couple hours of break, and then we went and did the From Crisis to Crisis episode.
I thought it was like literally like once we were done. And we were sad.
It was. They were just finishing up recording.
There was no waiting period.
Right. We had time to get like drinks and pee and stuff, and then they were ready for the next one.
This next email titled "Sorry It Took So Long" from Enigma.
Right back at you.
Whoops. We know the feeling. From Enigma 2099. Just recently started listening to this, and I'm hooked. Worth it for the Betty Brant Bertoni rants alone. The rest is like a sweet bonus. I particularly like the guest spots by familiar faces, and how you slick bastards, term of endearment, trust me, find new and subtle ways to insult them before the start of each show. Brilliant! Enigma 2099.
We do?
Yeah, we love insulting people.
And, they're all masochists because they keep coming back.
Is that a thing we do?
Actually.
Whenever Brad came on, I pulled called him the head of the Green Lantern crawl space, and I think I ribbed Mike Bailey a little bit. If he's listening to early episodes, then yeah, there's definitely some ribbing of the early guests.
I know JR ripped a lot of guest stars.
JR summed up the show in in 5 minutes.
The next email is from John, aka the Marvel Man, entitled Another Great Show. Hello, webheads. Yes, another terrific episode. You're as funny and entertaining and informative as ever. Here are a few questions for you. 1. Because you're covering every issue ever, included Spidey's appearances in other titles, even as a cameo, and because you seem to love the Untold Tales run, why did you choose to insert those issues with the Amazing run as you covered it? I'll speak for the other guys. We're going by publication.
Yeah, the idea is to take the stories as they came. I feel like Josh's mention of the story, I know he kind of got self-conscious for bringing it up after a while, but really I felt like bringing the elements from those stories into our conversations was as much as I wanted to do at that point. I definitely am glad that we had that in the show because it helped flesh out those early stories, but we're going by publication primarily.
And honestly, if you try and do it chronologically, like, it would never work, because then, like, we're at episode 10 or something, and then all of a sudden, like, Marvel decides to do a story about, what happened, in between Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, like, when Peter, like, went to high school, like, I'm just, like, doing a hypothetical, it's an actual story, but, like, where Peter was, like, late for high school and Liz Allen found his webs in a locker or something, then it's like, okay, now we have to go back and do that, and then, like, even just as recently as a year or two ago, they had a story about, like, an early Spider-Man Captain America team up in an annual. So they're always going to go back and add new stuff, and if we try and fit all the new stuff that they keep on adding in there, it just won't work and it'll disrupt the flow of the show. But we've talked about doing chapter 1 and Untold Tales specials, and I guess we should get around to those before like too much time gets away from that era.
A lot of stories are, people really like to retcon stories or retcon eras, and so you have a lot of Gwen Stacy stories that just get, inserted in there, and Spider-Man's origin has been revisited many, many times. We would have, I think the episode about his origin in Amazing Fantasy 15 went really well. It would have been an entirely different kind of monster if we had tried to incorporate all the different revisits of his origin story in the first episodes. We would have had to have, from Power, with Great Power Responsibility from 2008 in there. We would have had to have all the different annuals and backup stories. It's a very different thing when you try to take future issues and insert them chronologically. So that's not how I like to read comics, and so that's not how I chose to do the show. Although, if someone out there were to do something similar with other characters, that doesn't mean I wouldn't want to listen. It's just not how I choose to create the show.
It's certainly an idea, and I perfectly understand where he's coming from, like just cover it from the character's personal history, but if we approach it for that, I don't think the show would still be around just because of the amount of stories that would run into each other would be way too much. It would definitely be a monster that I don't think we could be able to keep a handle on.
If you want that sort of reading experience, go to chronologyproject.com and look up your favorite character, because they do try to take all the different stories and put them together in a chronology. And speaking of
you stole my segue.
Sorry.
Number 2, in terms of chronology, I'm curious about your source, although not critical at all, given that I love your show. My point is, my main Marvel Masterworks presents Annual 3 a bit later than you chose to cover it within your show. Why the discrepancy?
The basic order of issues that I have, I used internal information, because in the bullpen bulletins he'll say, and the annuals for such and such are out this month, so go check them out, and then the other ones are coming out next month. As far as the actual release dates, I'm getting those from DCindexes.com/Marvel, which is Mike's Amazing World of Marvel Comics. He has approximations as best he can of when the issues actually would have been coming out, based on a lot of data that I don't have. So I go by him for the actual release dates.
The Essentials also have the annuals, like not the later Essentials, but the earlier ones. They have those like near the end of the book. So I think that like the trades in the collection sort of get them out of the way of the main story and are less stringent with the actual release dates. So I wouldn't really rely on collections to go by release dates.
And I think they're really bad about that with the annual number 4. Don can correct me when we get there shortly, but I remember looking at some essential lists, and annual number 4 is only a few issues before annual number 5 in the collection.
Which one was number 4 again?
Number 4 is whenever he teams up with the Torch against the Wizard and Mysterio.
Oh yeah, that sucked.
Yeah. For the classic 5 annuals, that one was probably the worst. For chronological notes about what happened when and when people's next appearances were and how the stories that came out close together fit into each other chronology-wise, I really enjoy using the official Index to the Marvel Universe Amazing Spider-Man edition that was published first in multiple issue form and then as one single paperback book in 2010. So that's definitely a good place to go.
And if you want to see that book, it's in our Captain America, as a little pixel with probably that has glare on it. The Captain America video review that no, it wasn't in the Captain. It was.
I don't think it was. I think it was one of the ones we did.
Yeah.
After we came home from the panels.
We did some YouTube videos during San Diego that can be found on SpidermanCrawlspace.com. If you search in their categories thing, look under San Diego or under the videos category, and you should be able to find them. And I pop up the book because I was using Chronology Project for a while, and according to John, apparently the Chronology Project website matches the stuff in the book. But when I was doing which I'm done with by the time this episode's out, the Betty and Flash articles, hopefully I'm done. I'd use that because there was lots of points where the chronology would go crazy, but it was very useful for appearance lists, and it was very useful to figure out what order some of the 90s books go in when they all took place consecutively and all came out 4 times a month.
Right. Yeah, the Chronology Project, they had been doing their own ordering, but once those official indexes started hitting in 2008, they started adjusting their site to match what the books were saying.
Right. Can you get any better? I know the answer to this one. You can't. Thanks very much, guys. Well, we're going to try. John, a.k.a. the Marvel Man, who says take care. Thank you, John.
Yeah, appreciate the email, John. And those are good questions. Always happy to talk about how we make the show.
This is from our friend and one-time and future guest. I guess that doesn't make sense, one-time and future. But
once in future.
Yeah, once and future guest, Stephen Lacey. And I don't want to insult him by doing a British accent, but because he's a foreigner, let's do Australian accent. That story about Marvel checking the episode before it got posted, possibly because of MJ, was that absolute bollocks? What's going on with my baby?
I should have seen that coming.
Every Australian person is Claire from Lost.
As we have confessed since you wrote that email, Stephen, yes, the whole thing about Marvel vetting our episode and
was true.
Was completely and utterly true. Marvel is not holding a gun to my head and making me say that. Also, have you checked out Fear itself? It is so much more awesome than the new DC 52 books.
Don't forget to read Spider-Man, Spider Island hashtag.
And our last email for this particular episode is from Owen Choles. It's called Daredevil Rules. I don't know what kind of rules we had to follow regarding Daredevil, but there you go.
The rules are, if you're going to create a fictitious twin brother, no. The rules are, don't create a fictitious twin brother. It'll come back to bite you in the ass.
Somehow. I don't know how, but it will.
In what ways could it not?
That's the quote of the episode.
Name one way that creating a fictitious twin brother could not possibly have any negative repercussions whatsoever.
He'll be off the hook as Daredevil.
And I know that we already covered this, but that's such a 6-year-old thing to do. At school, Timmy, I saw you, spill, glue all over the desk. No, that was my twin brother. That wasn't me. Matt, are you Daredevil? No, it's my twin brother. I was your roommate. You never said you had a twin brother. You're right, I never did. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's good enough explanation that I need. But okay, go ahead. Daredevil email, twin brothers.
He says, "Hi guys, I'm a listener from the UK, one of many I'm sure. I found your show after searching for Daredevil podcasts and listened to your episodes dealing with Spider-Man's appearances in DD 16 and 17. Initially, I only listened to the Daredevil segment, but on the second show I let the podcast run long and found myself enjoying the show so much I went back to episode 1 and have enjoyed them all. That is really, really awesome.
I know. I love that.
As of this writing in May 15th, he's currently on episode 7, despite the fact that I do not own nor have I ever read the early Spider-Man issues. I will probably buy an essential trade and go back and listen to the episodes again with a reference next time. Yeah, I always like to read along whenever I'm doing a show like this, or listening to a show.
I know.
Me? Read along with a podcast? Try to do things in order? Perish the thought.
Reading along with, like, simultaneous podcast while, like, you're like the Cat in the Hat on that one page of the book where, like, he's on top of the ball and he's got, like, the goldfish on top of the umbrella and, like, the cake on his head.
He says, I have a question for you. Actually, Owen, it looks like you have several questions for us. Apologies if it's a stupid one, or if you have already explained this in the upcoming episodes, but how do you have access to the letters pages? Do you own the original comics? What format are you all reading Spider-Man's adventures in? Yeah, I'm using scans taken from the official Marvel license release of The Amazing Spider-Man. For other letters pages, I have to get copies of comics from other means, but for Amazing Spider-Man, I do have them from the Marvel's DVD.
Yeah, which they legally put out, and it's an awesome thing because it has the letters pages and the ads.
Right.
And I really don't like it when I buy a Marvel comic, like reprint or something, and they change original things about the issue, like, you know, like change the mistakes. Like, it's very, very George Lucas.
Whom we hate.
Yeah, like in the Spider Slayer episode, you know, in the Spider Slayer issue 25 thing where they had Greedo shoot first, like, you know, that was a stupid addition. Greedo wasn't even in the original issue. Greedo wasn't even created. Why?
Yeah, that's it. I'm reading. I have the entire. Actually, I picked up the latest ASM Essential Volume 10. And I have the entire collection. So, reading the letters pages, John just sends me scans of those online. But I read the comics and recap the comics by the Essentials, which is why I'm making a lot of black and white jokes.
Yeah, not because you're a racist.
Yeah, I'm a racist, all right.
He also goes on to say, I've been underwhelmed by the Daredevil podcasts I've listened to and would love to do a Daredevil show similar to yours. Alas, I lack the animated compatriots you enjoy and think a solo podcast with just me as the host might become quickly dull. It might be interesting since DD Volume 3 is about to begin to do a show discussing all 3 volumes simultaneously, starting with issue 1 from each volume. The same day that you wrote this email, Owen, another podcast was started up by our guests from not last episode we did the reboots, but 2 episodes back when we did the Deadpool-related issue. Tyler Crone is doing From Yellow to Red, a Daredevil podcast. That's on iTunes and at fromyellowtored.libsyn.com. You know, give it a try, see if it's your cup of tea. If you are looking for people on your side of the pond to do podcasting with, Stephen Lacey, you two should talk. Because you're both expressing similar interests. Maybe not in characters, but in podcasting. Anyway, thanks for all the entertainment. I love the affectionate but mocking tone you guys have. It's easy to be cynical, but I think you have a great positive dynamic going with an obvious love for the material. I particularly enjoy the guy, apologies for not knowing who's who. Yeah, because we all look alike. That does every character's lines in a really high voice for no apparent reason other than the fact that it's hilarious.
That's awesome.
I wonder who we could be talking about.
I wonder.
I love the guy who does the character's lines in a really high voice for no reason.
For no reason, and other than that, it's hilarious. Betty Brant, thanks you for that.
And he says, Excelsior and all that, ONC. Thank you for the email, and I hope you are continuing to enjoy the show. And if you've reached episode 36, then we've come full circle and everything's happy.
And Harry Osborn thanks you too.
And so does Flash Thompson. And Peter Parker, who's on just like...
So does Flash Thompson. Go. Don't forget to wear mittens when you type your email. There's germs all over the keyboard. And I'm Ned Leeds, and I'm also in this email.
And don't forget Robin.
I know what you're referencing, which is what makes it funny.
Oh God. Zach, not Zach. Josh is like the Mel Blanc of the ASM Classics voice acting.
That's what JR said. I remember that one time. I actually don't have that many voices. Like, when it was time to do, like, when I do a female voice, there's, like, only so many ways to do it. Like, so when I got to Gwen and MJ, I was like, okay, well, like, now that everyone, like, knows the Betty voice, because, like, people talk about the Betty voice on Crawl Space, and, like, it's, like, now that the ears are on it, I can't make the other girls sound like Betty, so.
Well, I think ever since, like, the Betty thing became a thing on the classics, I think that I think it's distinctive from the other ones. It's noticeably higher than Gwen and Mary Jane.
Who's Betty Cross? Well, just wait till Captain Stacy shows up. Gwen is gonna. Oy.
Thank you to all of you who have been writing emails. We are slowly catching up. If any of you would like to send in a message, it is at amazingspidermanclassics@gmail.com. Also want to share some of the reviews we've gotten from iTunes users. The first one is from Lord Alford, called Just Like Old Times, 5 stars. When I listen to John and the guys, I feel as if I'm back hanging out with my friends from high school and college talking about the latest comics, which was quite a while ago. Oh. Mm-hmm. These guys give a good review while joking all the way through it. It is my favorite podcast by far. When you listen to these guys, you'll not only get a summary of the comic, but also interesting behind-the-scenes information, the ads of the time, and the more interesting letters from the letters pages. If nothing else, you need to listen to the show to hear Josh's Peter Parker voice. Thanks, guys, for making me feel a part of the group. That was very, very kind of you to say, Lord Alford.
Lord Alford, or I assume he's a knight or something.
Is it bad if it's my favorite podcast by far as well?
Yes.
Sure, why not? It's horrible.
I really like to go back and listen to this show. It's fun.
I laugh.
Title: With great comics comes great podcasts. 5 out of 5 stars by Fancy Dan's Little Pants, which is an awesome title. Which is an awesome name. Entertaining reviews of every Spider-Man appearance starting at the beginning. These gentlemen provide us with great and funny insights to every issue. If you love Silver Age comics, you'll love this podcast. Thank you very much, sir. Twar1234 on April 20th, 2011 gives us 5 out of 5 stars, saying hilarious and fun. Great stuff. The runtime flies by.
And thank you to all 3 of you who left those reviews, and to everyone else who's been leaving iTunes reviews. They have been almost entirely 5 stars and very, very positive, and it's very encouraging to us to keep on trucking with this show.
Thank you. I agree. Thank you so much.
We're going to go to a break and play a promo for a podcast coming from the United Kingdom that has been going for several months now and is rather amazing, actually. So listen to this, check out their show, and we'll be back.
Hey kids, comics!
Hey Michael!
Yes?
We have to record a promo for our podcast.
I've got one. Read our podcast.
Read our podcast. You do know this is an audio medium?
Watch our podcast.
But you can watch podcasts, but not ours, because let's face it, we've got faces for radio.
No, wait, I've got it. Give me a second, right? What? Just listen to our podcast.
Listen to our podcast. Snap it. It's short, sweet. I'm liking it. It's good. It's great. Not exactly telling people what our podcast's about, though, is it?
We read comics.
We read comics. That's true. It's good. Liking it. Liking this pitch. Carry on.
Right. We talk about comics.
We do. We talk about comics. We read comics, and then we talk about them, because we can't talk about them before we read them. Excellent. Keep going.
And then
we sing!
Badly!
Yes, well, badly is purely subjective, but how many other comic book podcasts do you know where people sing?
Hey kids, comics!
Every Thursday at apleyland.podomatic.com.
Welcome back to Amazing Spider-Man Classics. We're going to go kind of backwards this episode, starting with a tiny cameo, then doing a guest appearance, and closing with the main Spidey book. So let's go to Strange Tales 156, because that book came out first on February 2nd, 1967, with the cover date of May. The Strange Tales series was at this time double headlining Doctor Strange and Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. When they started doing this, they would divide the cover into 2 portions, and each character would get a smallish cover image. But by this point in the series, they have moved to alternating covers. So each cover is more effective, I guess, was the main idea there. This particular particular issue has a big Doctor Strange cover introducing Zom, but we don't care about the Doctor Strange story. The Nick Fury story is called The Tribunal, and it's a chapter in the seemingly unending saga of Nick Fury's and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s first series of skirmishes with Hydra that will ultimately end in the seeming destruction of that organization. This is one of those strips that Stan Lee is just editing, not directly helping to create. Instead, Jim Steranko is doing writing and art chores, and this issue is lettered by Sam Rosen. In the story, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Bronson proves, after having worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. for several issues, that he is actually a double agent for Hydra when he blows up Nick Fury's quarters and then steals a ship called the Dyna-Soar. Get it? It soars dynamically.
Oh my god.
So it's the Dyna-Soar.
Are you sure Stanley didn't write this?
So
there was something in the water at the bullpen offices. Flo Steinberg, she was a pusher. Stan, it's time for your afternoon medication.
Right. So Bronson steals the ship, not knowing that Nick Fury is, of course, still alive, and had secretly stowed away on board. He gets to Hydra Island, and he broadcasts a message to the world that he is going to be releasing a germ bomb into the world's atmosphere. And as he describes the death spore's effects, we see 5 panels of reactions from all the various Marvel heroes. And one of those panels has Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Thor. They don't speak, and then it's gone, but damn it, it's a Spider-Man appearance, so there you go.
Oh, yes.
I'm not even sure exactly. I think he's actually smiling with glee. You can tell through the mask. It's
At the prospect of dying?
This is smiling. This is frowning. I'm smiling.
It's funny you mentioned that because the other cameo this month, has mentions of Spider-Man smiling and not smiling through masks.
Oh, that is funny. You're right. I forgot about that when I was saying that joke. Okay. Next up is Daredevil 27, which was released on the same day as the Amazing Spider-Man issue, but comes first chronologically. So I decree. Actually, I thought it did, and then the index confirmed it for me. That day,
and the issue confirms it for you too.
Oh, that's right, because there's a footnote in the Amazing issue. That's why I thought it was first. Okay.
Right.
That day that it was released was February 14th, 1967. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Those of you who were alive then, I hope you got your Valentine's card in class or got that kiss you were wanting.
Choose you.
I was just going to say that. Ralph Wiggum, you'll always get a Valentine from me.
Or maybe you got spectacularly laid, whichever applies to your age in 1967. I don't know. Our cover date here was April because Daredevil was one of several books that ran a month behind the majority of Marvel's comics and cover dates. And on the cover, which comes from Gene Colan and Frank Giacoia, we have a bit garishly yellow backdrop with a determined Daredevil up front and center pulling out his billy club like he's about to whack you one. Top left corner says guest starring the one, the only, the inimitable Spider-Man, and Spidey's swinging in on his webs. Bottom left, featuring the honest-to-gosh end of the Masked Marauder.
Thank God.
And Mr. Purple Hanky Face himself is aiming at us with a gun. On the right side, who's afraid of Stilt Man? And Stilt Man is springing up on his stilts, towering above Foggy and Karen, who cower below. Foggy, what can we do? Well, we can always resort to sheer panic.
Better than don't worry, Karen. He'd never be able to harm Daredevil.
How many issues ago was that plot? I guess it was a couple issues after that, the last Daredevil issue we covered where that was
we did
resolved.
16 and 17, which is when they started the Mike Murdock thing and had the Foggy might be Daredevil thing. So it's been 10 months. It really didn't take very long for Karen to forget that Foggy was saying that, though.
Well, no, because it was disproven because...
right, but then she should have, normally should have been, totally pissed off at him for lying and sort of maybe that way forever.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
But because by the time they got the letter from Spider-Man, she knew that Foggy wasn't Daredevil. Because then she's like, okay, now he's saying that Matt's Daredevil. No, it's Mike. Well, we'll get into all that.
But yeah, the Mike Murdock thing didn't start till later. Anyways, so how about our Titanic title? Mike Murdock Must Die. The credits are Stan Lee and Frankie Giacoia on story and art, with Art Simic lettering. And we have Daredevil on the prowl for the Stiltman after their run-in last issue. This isn't Stiltman's first appearance, that was Daredevil 8, but last issue was his first story since then. While out looking, Daredevil just happens to run across Spider-Man, busting up some common thugs. Daredevil steps in and thwumps a couple for Spidey, but Spidey doesn't seem too keen on the assistance, so Daredevil just quickly asks him if he's seen Stiltman. Asks him to keep a lookout whenever Spider-Man says no, and then completely thrashes Spider-Man 5 ways from Sunday for exposing his identity to Foggy and Karen and forcing him to adopt the third persona of Mike Murdock.
Look what you did to me! What's happened to my life? No, I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but I think you neglected to mention that this is illustrated by Gene Colan and not Frank Giacoia. I think, but I could be mistaken.
Did I say Frank Giacoia in the I don't know.
Yeah, I think it said Stanley and Frank Giacoia with Artie Simek lettering.
No, that is the elephant in the room. The whole they don't talk about the letter.
Yes, they don't talk about the letter at all. And that would be the perfectly normal thing to do in this story, since in Spider-Man's books, this whole subplot is never mentioned. In Daredevil's books, this is a big deal, and this is the first time that we've seen Spider-Man since that happened in issue 24-25, which was just 2 or 3 months ago, so you'd think that would be a big point between them, but it's never mentioned.
And I guess we'll talk about it when we get up to that, but the way that Spider-Man forgets, quote-unquote, forgets that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, because he relearns the information in the Gene DeWolf story in the 80s, doesn't even make sense.
This is just well, I guess we'll talk about it later. Never mind.
Well, we'll talk about it in the episode. I mean, I guess we can mention it now. We've always done spoilers for 60s stories.
Yeah, this book is this show is not spoiler free in case you haven't figured it out.
Well, I want to say does he just plain forget, or does somebody convince him that he's not Matt Murdock?
Well, no, Matt Murdock. For the millionth time in Daredevil, because this happens every other month.
Such a goofy book.
Yeah, no, I read 100 issues of Daredevil this weekend on orders by the police, and that's actually a true story. If you want to know the context behind that, ask us on the Amazing Spider-Man Classics Facebook page and all. But a villain had figured out that Matt Murdock was Daredevil, so the only solution for Matt Murdock to do was to fake his death so that everyone in the world, Foggy and everyone, thinks that he's dead. Spider-Man reads that Matt Murdock is dead in the newspaper and says, oh, I guess Matt Murdock wasn't Daredevil after all, except when Matt Murdock shows up alive and, a few issues later, Spider-Man didn't think, oh, well, he wasn't dead. Maybe he is Daredevil. But he's like, no, he faked his death for a little while, so I guess that must mean that he's not Daredevil.
That answers all my questions.
Yeah, it is one, and we'll talk about the Spidey appearances in Daredevil when all that's happening when we get there. But yeah, it's one of those things. And actually, whenever I read that Spidey cameo, and the way I remember is that he sees Daredevil swinging around, and he says to himself on panel, I thought Daredevil was a blind lawyer named Matt Murdock, because I guess he had learned before that panel that Matt Murdock was dead. So when I read that panel, which is a couple of years in the future from here, that's the first time I ever found out that Spidey had figured out Daredevil's identity. I hadn't read Daredevil 24 and 25, so I had to hunt that down and figure out when that happened. So yeah, it's a really significant plot in Daredevil's life caused by Spider-Man that never enters the Spider-Man books.
It's after issue 50, I remember, because...
Yeah, I want to say it's in the 60s somewhere, but I'll find it later.
He's going to fake Mike Murdock's death in issue 41.
So going back to the actual comic and not my notes, because I did go and pull up the credits, this was Stan the Man Lee and Gentleman Gene Colan with indescribable inking by fearless Frankie Giacoia. For some reason, I just eliminated a name whenever I was writing down the credits.
That's good.
So Daredevil doesn't really beat up Spider-Man. Daredevil just mentions Stiltman and heads on his merry way.
And says, if you see him, save him for me. If you see a villain who's trying to murder people, robbing things, don't stop him. Save him for me. He's not going to kill. He's not going to kill your uncle or anything.
Well, this is the same thing that happened with the Rhino, right? Spidey deserves his first crack at him.
And the whole thing about Daredevil not helping Spider-Man take down these thugs, that also seems kind of odd to me. It's like, I'm helping you out in a fight. You don't need to personally pound every single one of them.
Yeah, I don't like how Spider-Man's written in this issue. Well, it's not that I don't like how he's written, but I think Stan, for some reason, decided to play up the really sensitive, like jerky, antisocial side of Spider-Man in this issue, and he just comes off mean and annoying.
I'm just imagining Spider-Man like Peter Parker at the gravesite of like Aunt May and Mary Jane, Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy, like all murdered by Stiltman. Then like Matt Murdock's behind him. He's like, "I was saving him for you, Matt Murdock. You, and now everyone's dead. What were you doing that was so important? I was arguing with Foggy about who Karen loved the mostest."
And then she runs off with Peter.
She would. At an airport, no less.
So if this were all the Spidey that we got in this issue, I would be kind of peeved that he got cover billing as a guest star, which, like, in the Avengers number 11, when he was like guest starring Spider-Man, and it wasn't really Spider-Man the entire time. But he does come back later in the issue, so don't worry. Mass Marauder, he had helped Stiltman get away last issue, and now he wants Stiltman to return the favor by helping him capture Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson, and Karen Page, because the Marauder is convinced that one of them knows who Daredevil is.
Tommy Lee Jones toothpaste logic.
Stiltman doesn't want to help. Marauder shows him his disintegrating force field, and Stiltman shows him his awesome stilt action, and they are mutually impressed with each other, so they agree to work together. Seriously, when I think of Stiltman's power, I think of like a 1980s action figure where you push the button and their arms do something. Push the button and his stilts pop out. And then you squeeze them back in, and you push the button later and his stilts pop out.
Yeah, I never got the cool factor from this guy. He always seemed like a really just an off the wall idea.
Marauder is really impressed by him though, which is kind of weird.
Amazing.
So Stiltman goes to the Nelson Murdock law office and he gasses our three, companions before loading them into Marauder's helicopter waiting above. Then they fly around and wait for Daredevil to show up to capture them. Needless to say, this doesn't happen and they end up flying around for hours. Awake by this time, Matt speaks up and says, "Hey, if you want to know who Daredevil is, I'll tell you. He's my twin brother Mike." So of course, as our title tells us, Mike Murdock must die. Karen now hates Matt with a passion for betraying his own brother.
Oh, don't worry. With Karen, that only lasts a few pages. No pun intended.
And Stiltman bails on the helicopter to go find Mike Murdock. But who does he happen across instead? Well, if you guess the Teen Titans, then you go back to start and lose $200. If you guess Spider-Man, though, go to the head of the class. And by the way, those of you losing $200, you can just shoot me an email and I'll tell you where to send the check. So Stiltman immediately shoots up to super tall mode to dodge one of Spidey's kicks. But Spidey somehow swings vertically up to spunk the guy in the face. And he says, "I trust you've noticed that at no time do the fingers leave the hand."
I don't follow.
Back at the helicopter, Marauder realizes he no longer needs his captives because he knows who Daredevil is now. So he turns the force field on that's surrounding the helicopter and prepares to throw them each out to be disintegrated. Matt starts pleading for his life and then throws himself against the Marauder when he's off balance, which knocks the Marauder back into the disintegrator controls. You know they're the disintegrator controls because they say disintegrator next to the big button. With the force field off, Matt prepares to jump out. Marauder fires at him, but only succeeds in cutting his ropes. Hanging from the helicopter rails, Matt Murdock takes off his suit, drops all of his clothes and wallet and keys. Well, he doesn't have keys because he doesn't drive. Everything that, is his, he drops them off to the ground, pulls his cowl overhead, and swings back into the helicopter as Daredevil.
As the clothes land on the ground, and some woman's like, "It's the Rapture! No, I've been left behind."
Sorry, my brain just went there for a second. They fight for a while, and Daredevil calls the Marauder by name, which pretty much brings the plot thread of who is the masked Marauder to a close. And the Marauder,
I love this.
He removes his helmet.
No, he doesn't remove something. He demands that Karen remove something because there's no need for it anymore.
Oh yeah, Karen, remove my helmet and make.
And she does it. He's like, "Bitch, why am I going to listen to you?" She's like,
"Then there's no longer any need for concealment. Remove my helmet, girl. Remove it, I said."
And Karen's thinking, "I wonder if he's going to propose after I remove his helmet."
It's great stuff.
So, reactivating the disintegrator field, the Marauder goes after Daredevil again, but ends up falling out of the helicopter into the field himself, and we see him die in a big flash of movie magic. Back to our webhead, Stiltman throws a stun gas pellet at him and gets away, which is kind of disappointing, but that's how Spider-Man rolls in the Daredevil books. He always gets taken out kind of easily. An unnamed reporter, who might be Ben Urich, asks Spidey for a statement, but Spidey blows him off with his usual disdain for the press, and that's his exit from the book, and for all intents and purposes, the end of the story. So, what do we think of this one?
As a Daredevil story, I actually liked it. As a Spider-Man appearance, I didn't like how Spider-Man was being portrayed, but I actually really liked the fight scene at the end on the helicopter. It's goofy, but I do like the scene where Matt is like hanging off the bottom of the helicopter and changing into Daredevil. I found that pretty cool. But again, as a Spider-Man appearance, I think you can find better ones.
Yeah.
Tom Brevoort wrote a feature, and it was either a late 80s or early 90s Spider-Man annual, and it was like top 10 or top 20 most embarrassing Spider-Man moments. And it's Spider-Man narrating. He's like, boy, who could forget the time when I was unmasked by Dr. Octopus, or, when I did my laundry wearing the mask. And the fight with Stiltman was number... Let me see. It was number 4 here. You listeners can't see this because this isn't an enhanced AAC podcast, but the people in the chat window can see it because I just put the image in there. It was spectacular.
Wow, it appeared right before my eyes.
Spectacular Spider-Man Annual 12. That's what I put on.
I have read this. Yeah.
Everyone loses a fight once in a while, but still, man.
I remember this page.
Yeah.
What can I say? I was young and cocky, just beginning my career. Never happen again, right? And then the pun is, like, the number 3 moment is, wrong, it did happen again in Amazing Spider-Man issue 237.
Which, yeah, I think is the next time these two characters meet.
Yeah. The Masked Marauder comes back, like, years later, and he actually fights Spider-Man and Daredevil in the first Carian story. Like, he shoots Spider-Man in the eyes and, like, makes him blind. So, like, Daredevil has to, like, teach Spider-Man how to be blind. But, like, there's a Daredevil website that I went to where they note, how come when the Masked Marauder came back, he didn't say, oh, yeah, Mike Murdock is Daredevil and I'm going to kill him. But that's actually easily explainable because Mike Murdock was, like, publicly killed off, and then everyone said, well, Daredevil, like, publicly said, I'm the second Daredevil. Mike Murdock was the first one. He actually went on the news and said that. So, like, in the Marvel Universe, if you went onto Daredevil's Wikipedia page, they would say that, like
his twin brother was Daredevil first.
Yeah, it would say that, like, Mike Murdock was, like, that's public knowledge. Like, he said that on a Los Angeles TV station. He said that in an issue of Rolling Stone magazine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So that's why
when the Masked Marauder comes back, is it the same guy?
Yeah, I don't. Yes, from what I understand, it was. I don't, like, have the stories in front of me, but from what I understand and from what, like, was written by these people on the fan sites, it was the same guy.
And we've talked both on and off the air about how Matt Murdock's secret identity as Daredevil being public knowledge is like a thrice happening thing or whatever. Whenever it happens, do people make the connection that he was Daredevil just like his quote unquote brother was?
I've never seen, like, Mike Murdock mentioned since the 70s in any of the Daredevil that I've mentioned. Like, in that Bendis story where the FBI agent was like, it gets stranger. Elektra, his girlfriend, like, died in his arms on his doorstep after a fight with Bullseye, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, I'm waiting for the FBI man to say, oh, by the way, and in this issue of Rolling Stone, they say that Mike Murdock is his twin brother, and that guy doesn't even exist.
It kills me that no one finds out that this man, like, how do you not know that a guy doesn't exist? Like, there has to be records about his life, even in the 60s and 70s.
I'll read to you my Facebook status from earlier this afternoon when I read this issue in preparation for recording. Yeah, okay, I put...
Is it safe for work?
Yeah, no, I put Mike Murdock just sold out his fictional twin brother to people attempting to murder him. And I love how... And I called Don and I talked about this. Like, okay, like... He's not a douche, really, because, like, okay, like, it's a fake person, but as far as like Foggy and Karen know, and like what makes it even more ridiculous is like they don't torture him. They don't say, "Tell me who Daredevil is," or "I will rape Karen Page in front of you," and like,
I shouldn't be laughing at that.
"Tell us who Karen Page is, or I will slowly gut Foggy Nelson." It's okay, Matt. Don't reveal who Daredevil. Like Matt just like they're not even like threatening them with torture. They're just flying around the helicopter. Matt's like, "Oh, I know who Daredevil is. Pick me, pick me." Like he sells his brother out like the first chance he gets. It's just like it's his fictitious twin brother. Like the whole thing, it's so ridiculous.
And like to me, it seems okay. Matt is going to spend some time as Mike. I mean, he does that now. That's weird, but he does. Telling Karen and Foggy that Mike Murdock is really Daredevil is one thing. Telling supervillains that Mike Murdock is really Daredevil is completely different because he is living part of his life as Mike Murdock. They can come after Mike Murdock and capture Matt thinking that they have Daredevil.
Or capture Karen and Foggy because they're friends of Mike.
Yeah, so he's not helping anybody. I mean,
birth records.
Exactly.
Wouldn't
Birth
it
records.
lead him down the path? Check like research. Let's research this Mike Murdock guy.
Of course, those sorts of things were a lot more involved in the 60s before computers.
I suppose so.
But the whole Mass Marauder storyline, we did see that a few episodes back in Daredevil 16 with my brother Jim. So it was kind of cool to be here again at the end of it, with Spider-Man showing up again at the end of the story. But the Mass Marauder's secret identity plot, to me, it was like one of the least dramatic reveals in comics because it had been very unsubtly hinted at in earlier issues, and the guy who's the Mass Marauder is not an interesting character in the plot, so it doesn't even really matter. It's not as much as the Butler did it, but it's almost that bad. It's like someone you don't even care about.
Karen says Mr. Farnham, like is he like the milkman or something? Like why not the full name?
I think he's their landlord. I think he's the landlord for the law office. It's been a while since I read the back issues of this. Yeah,
Mr. Furley.
Mr. Dickovich.
He doesn't do anything except occasionally menace them for their money because I think they're running behind on their rent payments.
That's
for the
a crappy ass reveal, man.
It really is. It really is really bad. And like in one issue, there's a panel that does a really big close up on the fact that Farnham or whatever his name has a ring, and then later in the same issue, there's a big close up on the fact that the Mass Marauder has the same ring. So we've known who this guy is for issue. If you were reading the book, you've known it for several issues.
Those features, that hair. You're the father of one of my classmates.
You're the landlord.
I'm the landlord.
He has a snively like mustache too. Like he just looks like a twerp.
But I don't really have much else to say about this. I mean, it was a fun little guest shot for Spidey. He's written kind of jackass-ish in a few places, and he gets taken down by a gas pellet, which is kind of
like a tool in a lot of issues. Like, I remember the Fantastic Four backup story in one of the earlier Spider-Man issues where like he's a tool to Johnny. I don't think he was mean in Avengers 11, but in X-Men he refused to be a member of the X-Men. He's always antisocial and standoffish in these guest star shots.
Yeah, which is just weird because it's the same guy writing them. But I mean, we've talked about that before, how like, you see things from Peter Parker's point of view, you understand why he's a bit standoffish at times. You see things without his point of view, and it's just other people interacting with Spidey, and he's a jerk.
In his own title, in that issue where it's like, Johnny Storm's having a party at his girlfriend's house? Well, this will teach him to have a party at his girlfriend's house.
I will give you that. In Amazing Spider-Man 8, in that backup story, Spider-Man is Asshole of the Month.
They're not, they don't reference the love triangle this issue, which they used to do all the time. So.
The Foggy, Karen, Matt love triangle?
Yeah, which is now like a square because like Mike's in there. Because Mike starts to date Karen when he shows up.
Or there's that one point where like Karen's berating him. She says, "Oh, Matt, how could you? How could you have betrayed your own brother? I never expected it of you, never." And he thinks to himself, "Well, Matthew boy, if you ever had a chance with Karen, forget it. You just blew the whole bit." Which made me think that Stan Lee writes every character the same. It's not like Peter Parker's voice.
It's definitely Peter Parker and Gwen, or Peter Parker and Betty, or
Or Tony Stark and Pepper and Happy, because there was a silver age issue where like he deliberately wants like Happy and Pepper to get laid, so he's like, I better break Pepper's heart because she can never be with me because my heart has like sharp roll in it or something. So he says, I got engaged. He doesn't say who he got engaged to, and nobody questions it. So
Nice.
he's like, well, that finishes things with me and Pepper.
This may be a tangent, but like I that makes me think. I wonder if Stanley ever got out of that romance comics like mode he was in, because he wrote romance comics for like the Marvel guys for a while with Jack Kirby and Dan DeCarlo and those guys. He wrote them for years, so I'm wondering if he ever got that out of his system or not. Probably not. Obviously not.
So our main book for this episode is Amazing Spider-Man 48, which was also released on February 14th, 1967, though with a cover date of May, like the Strange Tales issue. And Donovan Grant is going to tell us about this book.
The Vulture's back and Spidey's got him. Or does he have him? Wait, no, that's switch that around, possibly. Okay. The Amazing Spider-Man in The Wings of the Vulture. An awesome aggregation of airborne thrills by Smilin' Stan Lee and Jazzy Johnny Romita, learnedly lettered by Whammy Sammy Rosen. If you didn't read... Okay, first of all, this and the next issue, I would have to say, are two of the most alliterative, expositional explosions of dialogue I've ever seen from a comic book, which is what makes it so much fun.
Do you need to break out the reboot issues again?
No. I learned my violent lesson last time we did that, but I will try to not repeat or reread the entire issue on the air, but I will point out the ones that convey the most sensibilities of the issue. And this splash page has Spider-Man giving not one, not two, but 7 whole word balloons of dialogue. He basically talks to the reader as he's looking dead at the reader through the fourth wall. He is saying/telling, now that my Peter Parker duds are safely stashed away, it's web swinging time again. If Kraven the Hunter is still in the city, I've got to keep searching till I find him. Can't let that tin-horn Tarzan go through life thinking he's beaten me. Even a starry-eyed Spider-Man has his pride. But if this cold spell doesn't break up soon, I'm liable to be the only web crawler in town wearing a muffler and mittens. And basically he's like expositing the whole situation from the last issue and the next issue and this current issue, as it is like a snowstorm right now in New York. But I can't quit now. I've got a feeling that the deadliest fight of my life will be coming up soon, he says to himself as he's looking at us. So Spider-Man is swinging around, leaping around, looking for trouble, and Kraven the Hunter. But as he swings over the nearby municipal prison, he decides to go home and try to warm up while he can. Meanwhile, we've cut to a scene where like a dying man is being looked at by doctors and the warden. And as he is dying, they say that he deserves his last request that he is begging for them. He requests that a man named Blackie should come up to see him, and they will reveal that it is none other than Adrian Toomes, a.k.a. the Vulture. So, hooray, he's dying! My prayers have been answered.
We still don't have a name for Adrian Toomes, though.
And we don't know why he's dying. It says like a workshop thing. Like, was he like Johnny Cash's brother or something? Like he got table sawed, or?
Yeah, it says beneath the grim gray walls of the penitentiary, an inmate lies near death because of an unexpected mishap that occurred in the prison workshop.
I mean, he could be like Sans legs now and bleeding out on the bed there.
Under the blanket, you don't even want to see. He's like, he's got like bone. Ah! Oh, never mind. My mind went somewhere else.
Vulture venom.
All right, we'll send for him. In the meantime, don't talk. Try to save your strength, the doctor say to Toomes, that we don't know his name yet. But he thinks to himself, I'll save it all right. I won't cash in until I make sure that Blackie will finish the job I started. So we see this ugly guy who kind of, to me, looks like Kuwabara from Yu Yu Hakusho come toward Toomes and beg for him to tell him that the secret of where his stash is Vulture gear. After Toomes gives up the scoop, Blackie starts screaming to himself, saying, "It worked! I got what I want at last!" And he reveals that it was his fault that the Adrian Toomes is now dying, but we don't know exactly why. That was no fool. That was no accident, you fool. I arranged it to get you to talk, but no one will ever know, except in you and me. And soon it'll just be me, Blackie Draco, the new Vulture. And he screams this without anybody hearing him, for some reason.
Yeah.
So
the nurse in the next, like, you know, like I guess like curtain is like, oh, that Blackie.
He's like gripping. He's clenching his fists, screaming to himself with glee, and like he just completely gets away with it. It's not even a closed room; it's like an open wing.
People like 12 feet away, they can hear enough that there's a ruckus, but they can't hear what's actually being said, which doesn't seem very believable.
With the police, and guards nearby, like, you think Blackie's gonna like try and do something? Nah.
So the Vulture calls him a douche, and as he lays down, possibly dying, he thinks of images of him beating up Spider-Man, and he says, "I know I could have defeated him if I just hadn't been dying, but now it's up to Blackie Jargo. He's even deadlier than I was, and he'll have the Vulture's wings. So Spider-Man is doomed at last." A short time later, Blackie Jargo, for some reason, is like he says that he's been given trust to be like outside the gates to walk around. He says, "It took me years to get."
I don't think it's outside the gates. I think it's like to like basically be able to like walk in the yard by the gates.
Well, yeah, they do say inside the gates, but it's like he basically like walks around, and I suppose that's possible. It just seems kind of like convenient for the plot to me.
It is.
Oh yes, it is. So as a car is driving inside the prison, Drago sneaks up on the driver and karate chops him, saying that if I can get away with this, I'll be unstoppable. There's no one living who can stop a man with wings. Now remember that quote, because he doesn't stop saying it. So the guard, recognizing his voice, calls for reinforcements, but Drago is speeding off. He speeds off to the nearby location where the Vulture wings are, and even though the cops give chase and start firing at him, he eventually gets down the Vulture's flying ability, and he gets away. We cut to the next scene next day where Harry Osborn and Peter Parker are driving towards ESU, and Peter has a horrible headache. He has obviously been out of the cold too much, swinging around as Spider-Man. So we see scenes where it occurs more and more as he's in class and talking to Gwen. In fact, Gwen herself looks really ravishing because she has her classic hairstyle now. Just in this issue, sans the hairband.
Yeah, and her face is different too. They've softened up her eyes. They have made Gwen a nicer pretty.
It's like Clark Kent, if you change her hair, the shape of her whole face changes.
I was actually going to try to look back for comparison, but there's no time. Hi, Gwen. Say, you're looking great wearing your hair that way. Why, thank you, Pete. It's just a casual little style, which took all morning to arrange. But I kind of want Josh to read this line because his Harry voice has been killing me lately.
Okay, yeah. Well.
Yeah. Oh boy, just my luck. Gwen's in a mellow mood, and I feel like an accident looking for a place to happen.
Say, no wonder Pete likes your hairdo, Gwen. It's more like the way Mary Jane's been wearing hers.
Oh, that's right. I hadn't thought of that. Harry, why must you have such a big flapping mouth? And my thoughts exactly.
And like before that, like whenever they're riding in the car, it seems like Harry just won't stop talking. You coming down with something? I feel that, I don't know, there's a lot of back and forth between Harry and Peter's basically saying, I feel terrible. And Harry's like, you really, really feel terrible? I feel terrible. Oh, wow, I bet you really, really feel terrible. Yeah, I feel terrible.
He never knows it's like last issue, he never knows when to shut up.
Yeah, like when he's like, oh, maybe a little bit, like when they're getting ready for the party. And then, like, even in the Ditko issue where, like, Osborn and Jameson are having a meeting, and then Harry's like, something's got to be done about these break-ins. And then, like, we said that, like, Jameson and Osborn were, like, probably being, like, condescending to Harry, like, oh, your boy, he's really sharp. Yeah, he'll get far. Good advice.
He says, I'm probably coming on the cold, Harry. Wow, you look like a whole virus town's having a convention right in your noggin. He's like, yes. Boy, I bet you could infect a whole city just by sailing a few times. Yes.
Golly, I've never seen somebody so sick ever, Peter. Ooh, tell me about the germ some more. I have a friend. I'm having a conversation. Social interaction.
And that's when Peter pummels Harry with his cold, hard hand.
Ever since Flash went to Vietnam, I've had no one to hang out with.
Cut to outside the car or outside the classroom where, like, you just see Harry going through the window. I do like his Fisher hat he's wearing in the car. It's pretty awesome. So, Professor Warren tells Peter to go home.
Professor Warren.
Completely emasculates Peter in front of Gwen, which I do not think is an accident.
Oh.
Well, he always hated him according to the latest issue of Deadly Foes of Spider-Man one-shot.
I don't buy that, but, like, because Professor Warren, wants to like be alpha dog, and when Stan wrote this, Professor Warren was not in love with Gwen, but because it's been retconned that he was always in love with Gwen, you could say like that Professor Warren could tell that Gwen was attracted to Peter, so he decides like, let me take this boy down a peg. So he basically goes over,
I suppose you could say. I never thought of it that way.
It happens a lot, like, over the course of the lead run, and it's done, like, for tension, like, Peter's teacher's mad at him, but, like, there's a few different cases where, like, Professor Warren, like, verbally will cut down Peter, like, when Gwen is within earshot.
GTFO, Parker. So Peter goes home and watches television with J. Jonah Jameson basically berating Spider-Man, as he always does, and will do next issue. But we cut to learn that not only is Kraven still on the loose, but Blackie Drago is making the scene as the new Vulture. Peter really wants to go after him, but his headache is getting worse and worse and worse. A short time later, again, we cut to Drago making a helmet for himself that makes him look more and more like an actual Vulture. So I'm not going to say science, but like it's almost like he's the Shocker. He knows exactly what to do to put like a shortwave receiver in there for some reason.
And in the cartoon, that shortwave receiver helps him talk to vultures through Dalek lights on his head.
Oh, yeah, that's an improvement over the source material.
I do remember him being in the 67 cartoon. Very much.
He's in 2 episodes, at least. 2 episodes that I remember seeing. He has the Dalek lights in both of them, but they only turn on and off in the second one whenever he's able to command vultures to go and do things.
Is what I'm saying? Exterminate. Well, the funny thing about that one is that like I saw the clip where like Spider-Man tricks all the villains to like go after each other, and like he just gets shot down by the Electro. But Draco loves this. He's flying around. He keeps on saying that nobody can stop a man with wings.
I remember when I was reading this to Lily, and she was like, "Okay, we get it."
No, like I don't. This is why I don't like the Vulture. Like, he has the most basic, boring ability ever. He can just fly, but all of a sudden they think they can take over the universe with this. I never got that logic. It's like Stillman. What's the point? And like he says, Blackie Drago is going to make the old Vulture like a 2-bit piker, whatever that means.
Do y'all think that the first 2 panels of page 10 look like they were taken out of Amazing Spider-Man 2?
The
first Vulture story? I really feel like those first 2 panels are an homage to the very first time we see the Vulture attack. It's this same sort of thing. There's a shadow over a guy with a briefcase, and he swoops in and stags the briefcase.
I think that if you're going to have the Vulture rob a guy, though, like, there's only so many ways that you can have a Vulture rob a guy. I think it's more coincidence than it is,
Well, they did make an addition in this one. I mean, they had Alfred start calling the police about him in the third panel on that page. So yeah, speaking of Alfred, like the Vulture perches on top of like the edge of a building, saying, "Even Spider-Man hasn't dared to show himself. He knows I'm his master." Which I don't follow that logic at all. If I haven't said that, the Vulture's begun robbing people and stealing attaché cases and parole bags and the like. So Spider-Man is not avoiding him, knowing that he's his master, and is actually suiting up right this second. But his headache is going more and more and more throbbing and dangerous towards his overall health. And he starts to reach for the phone. I hate to do this, but maybe if I call Matt Murdock, he'll put Daredevil on his trail. It's the least he can do after me fighting Stiltman for him, which...
It's the least he can do after I completely disrupted his life and caused him to make up a fake twin brother, which is going to have repercussions for years to come.
Why wouldn't he help me?
But then, and knowing him, he'd probably call the law offices of Nelson and Murdoch. Karen would answer, and he'd be like, "Oh, hi, I want to speak to Matt. Tell him to," and like he'll like wink into the phone, dress up as Daredevil, and fight this guy for me, and then like hang up the phone. Well, that takes care of that. And then Matt comes back, and it's like, you just killed off Mike, even though Mike Murdoch hasn't been killed off yet. I thought that Mike Murdoch was dead. Now Spider-Man's saying that you're Daredevil again. It's time that I told you the truth. I'm actually a triplet.
Now, see, it would be a cool opportunity here to throw in the fact that Peter knows that Matt is Daredevil, but the way he phrases it, it really sounds like he doesn't. I hate to do this, but maybe if I call Matt Murdock, he'll put Daredevil on his trail.
Yeah, exactly. If you've never read the Daredevil issue where he finds out, that goes over your head completely.
Right. But if he had said something like, since Matt is, Daredevil, I should give him a call, star Spider-Man determine Matt's identity in such and such issue, and just put the little box down there. It could have easily been done. It's just phrased weirdly, and I wonder if Stan forgot.
Maybe well, I don't know if Stan forgot, honestly, because they came out in the same day, didn't they, or the same month?
And again, it's like why else would Spider-Man call Matt Murdock to like put Daredevil on his trail? Like why else would Stan have that if he didn't know? I think it's phrased funny, but like it's the interpretation to take, and Stan wouldn't put it there if he didn't know, unless Stan really did forget,
which is highly possible. But then he slams down the phone saying, "No, I can't chicken out at a time like this. I fought the Vulture before. I know his style. Even if this is a new Joker wearing those crummy wings, it's still Spider-Man's job. Whatever else I may be, I'm no quitter." Cut to next issue. So he.
Oh no, 2 issues from now.
Oh yeah, 2 issues from now. I'm sorry. So he yanks his mask on and leaps into action. The Vulture. Okay, actually, let me read this. And as our soliloquizing stalwart makes the rooftop scene, and so the Vulture is preying on this man who's handcuffed to an attaché case with a bunch of valuable bonds inside. He takes the man with him and drops him on top of a high sky tower on top of the George Washington Bridge.
Dun dun dun.
No.
Not again! Not like Gwen!
I was just about to say foreshadowing for like the next page.
Whenever I'm on this bridge, I feel like somebody stepped onto my soul.
So Jago is threatening the guy when we cut to Spider-Man and seeing all the police cars heading towards the Hudson River. So he knows where to go, even though his headache is interfering. His headache and both, I didn't mention this before, but apparently, we'll talk about this later, that both his headache and the snow are interfering with his spider sense. So he managed to get to the bridge and starts crawling up behind Jago and knocks him down as Jago spirals down into the water and Spider-Man for some reason doesn't say no, not like Gwen. He saves the man, swinging him down to the streets, and his spider sense starts to go off as Jago starts to attack him. Spider-Man webs his legs and Jago drags him around flying and slams him into the cables. Every time Jago hits Spider-Man, he gets more and more dizzy and weak because of the headache, as Jago grabs him by the legs and pretty much drags him from the neck in midair. We cut then to a scene with Mary Jane and Aunt Anna and Aunt May visiting Harry and Peter's pad. With Aunt May, just, she's always worried. Somehow she learned that Peter had left school early because he was sick. Which, okay, let's talk. How did she know that?
It's Aunt May. You don't think that, like, she's got Professor Warren on her speed dial, and, like, she calls every day, like, "Did Peter wear a jacket into class today? By the way, what's your curriculum this semester? Make sure that Peter doesn't go near any of those dangerous chemicals."
You know what this reminds me of? We were just watching Arrested Development tonight, and the mother on that, the way she treats the son with the glasses. Buster, yeah. We're watching the episode tonight where she's not allowing Buster to go swimming in the ocean. No, you're not going to go swim in the ocean. You're not going to go swim in the ocean. Of course,
and he's like 30.
Yeah, he's 32 years old. Of course, the silly part of that show is that whenever he does finally go swim in the ocean, his hand gets bitten off by a seal. So it actually really, ends up she had a point, but she didn't really have a point because that was completely random and hijinks.
There was an episode in the first season where, like, it's like Buster trying to, like, become more independent and, like, go out from his mother's, like, shell. And, like, she goes into a boardroom meeting and, like, tells off, like, Buster and, like, the other son, Job. And then, like, Buster, like, he's basically going to go back with the mom. And the brother's like, "What? But after everything that happened, you flew so high today." And then Buster's like, "Yes, but a little too close to the sun." And then the mom says, "You let him go out in the sun?"
I remember that.
And then, like, the funny thing is, like, the camera pulls out and, like, this, like, big, like, thing, like, it was in the middle of a boardroom meeting for the family's company. The whole, like, board of directors was there.
Yeah. She's terrible.
So while May is being relieved, Mary Jane says to Harry, "Hey there, handsome. I just had an economy-sized brainstorm. Let's drive Mrs. P and my ever-loving auntie home in your chariot, and then we can go join PDO for a Coke, okay?" Because Harry told him that he hasn't come home yet, so then he must be at the Silver Spoon drinking some Coke or something. "Best offer I had all day, MJ. You only said it because it's true." So we cut from that flight of fancy to more fights of violence.
Before we get one, can I just draw attention to one thing in that speech balloon?
Go shoot.
Look at how they spelled okay.
Yeah?
It's O-K-E.
I have
Which-
okay.
Really?
Yeah, I have okay, period, question mark.
Okay, the original spelling is an outdated, archaic spelling for okay, which was OKE, which you will see, especially in Golden Age comics, whenever the phrase okay was new to the language and no one really knew how to spell it. You'll see
Wow.
OKE a lot. And that's how it is in this issue. It's OKE. And that's how you spell okay.
Yeah, I glossed over because the Essentials edited that out.
It actually, when I first read it, I wasn't sure if it was some sort of like rhyming game that didn't really mean anything. Then we can join PDO for a Coke. Oak? But no, I think it's supposed to be okay, and I guess they thought so too because whenever they did the Essentials.
Well, yeah, the Essentials have corrected some things before in the past.
Yeah.
So while Drago was dragging Spider-Man in midair by the neck, Spider-Man karate chops both his legs and forcing him to let go because of the pain, as he says. He lands on a nearby flagpole and starts mounting his offense, but Drago slams him back into the wall. Spider-Man, we've never seen him this weak before, or I'm not going to say that, but not in a while, just because of this cold. His head is pounding, he's dropping in and out of consciousness, and he's thinking to himself as he's clinging to the wall, if I didn't have this fever, if my head wasn't burning so, I could take him. I know I could, but I can't just give up now. How can Spider-Man be beaten by a common cold? I never thought the end would come like this. And this basically shows how this is like one of those issues from the past where a lot of people like to say, "Oh, Spider-Man, he's such a relatable hero. Sometimes when he fights villains, he's sick."
They did it in issue 12, and they're doing it in issue 48. So
never again.
It's 3 years apart. I wouldn't say it's a super common thing, especially since 3 years was a much longer time in comics back then than it is now.
Well, when they do stuff like this, they like play it out to the extreme. Like at one point, he's like, I wonder if there's ever been a superhero carrying around tissues before.
Yeah, and nose drops or whatever. So he actually blacks out. Everything going dark. Hang on. The world's spinning around. And before he hits the ground, Drago gets in one last kick and slams him into a nearby roof. He's finished! If the fall didn't do it, the freezing cold will. While he lies there, Spider-Man has been destroyed at last by the high-flying vulture.
Nobody can beat a man with wings.
I'll take over the world with this wonderful power.
No need to check for his body.
Well, his body is lying out cold. Spider-Man's just completely splayed out on top of the snowy roof. To be continued.
With a big question mark.
Okay.
To be continued? So, is it just me, or did the art really open up in this book? I don't know if maybe they did it in previous issues, but I noticed it for the first time here, where we have like 3 or 4 panels on a page, huge cinematic images, and I really think this is where Romita starts to open up, because he started out doing really tight paneling like Ditko did, and now we're having really, really open panels.
Go ahead, Josh.
I think that's just the difference between like where comics, storytelling is going now, because issues of other Marvel comics are starting to be more like that as time goes on.
Okay.
I was going to say in last issue, I actually was just looking back just now. If you noticed, halfway through the Kraven issue, I don't know if it was because of the action scenes or what, but you would get more of those lesser paneled pages, and I think that would carry over into the rest of the run.
Yeah, I'm flipping through the Kraven issue now. Once he attacks, yeah, you're getting 3-4 panels on a page after that point, and then once the action's over, it tightens up again to 6. But I don't think we have any, or at least not many, pages in the book that have more than 6 panels, whereas Ditko was, usually, 8 or 9. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Just one thing I noticed. So thank you for that recap, Donovan. This is a pretty fun issue. What did y'all think?
I liked it.
We both like it.
I like it.
Mike, he likes it. Going back to the beginning of the story, I don't remember it looking like winter in the last issue. Like, he mentions a cold spell, and it really sounds like we're following up almost immediately on the last issue. I'm just going to assume that Spider-Man was out hunting for Kraven when he found the thugs and Stiltman in the Daredevil issue, because it really feels like it's following up pretty directly from there. But now it's snowing everywhere, and he's complaining about how a cold spell is being really persistent. But it doesn't really does not really jive with what we saw last month.
You know, the funny thing is that like I've noticed ever since I was a little younger that a lot of modern comics these days will play up on the seasonal time that is in real life. But this issue was like it was like this was like right when spring started when this came out, right? Like around March.
No, this issue came out early February, which in the Northeast is definitely still in the middle of snow.
Oh, never mind. Lots of cover dates.
Having lived in Connecticut, because February to me, you're not supposed to get cold weather anymore after that. But having lived in Connecticut for 3 years, February, you still have a month or two ahead of you of snow.
I do think this is the first issue that has been in the winter. I think. I really hope so too. For you.
I think you're right too. I think this is the first time they've really brought that out, that it's snowy time.
I don't think that it is, but I have nothing to back that up on.
Although in black and white it's kind of hard because that scene where Jago knocks out the driver, it's hard to tell where the thought captions are coming from with all the snow.
Oh yeah, without the color. Now you're saying Drago. Josh, did you always say Drago or did you say Drago?
I think I said Drago. I don't remember. I don't say his name that often because he's not really like, you know.
Because in my head I've always said Blackie Drago, but while you were doing your recap, I went and looked up the name, and it's an Italian surname, so I guess it is supposed to be Drago.
Yeah, I love Rocky IV, so that's probably why I say Drago.
Oh, and I haven't seen the Rocky films.
Yeah, when he's like, does Stan Lee like already recycling names? Because, you know, we got another Blackie now.
Yeah. I think we've actually had a few Blackies, like not the one that's owning a convenience store now, but
the murderer of Bennett Brandt,
right?
Who passed the blame on the Dr. Octopus, like in death, like everywhere every time it's brought up, like thereafter, it's Dr. Octopus killed Bennett Brandt. Like the way that they tell it, it's like Dr. Octopus like choked the life out of him, like with his tentacles.
No, he was doing something else with his tentacles during that time.
And Betty was right next to him.
Whenever Spidey is swinging past the prison, he's all up in the sky above the prison walls. And I'm all of a sudden very curious what kind of tall structures there are right next to the prison that he could be swinging from. It seems like those structures might be conducive to a jailbreak, and you really shouldn't be building there.
I know. It's totally like... there was a game... I seem to recall back when I was really, really, really first made aware of Spider-Man. Like I'm talking like the first like 6 months of the year. This is like back when I was like 5 or 6. That there was a game that was either related to the Spider-Man 90s show, or it was like a commercialized joke during the 90s show's premiere, where it asked like, I think it was a computer game, and it said, "Where does Spider-Man's webs go?" Because so often, either whether it's in comics or cartoons or media, you don't see where he swings at. So like it's just seeing him like swing from the sky.
Right.
That's what this reminds me of.
And one of the things that annoyed me about the Spider-Man movies is he would shoot his web up to something, and then it would just pull him up. You know, he would be standing flat-footed, shoot his web, and then he would just lift into the air. That's not the way that's supposed to work. But like in the Daredevil issue, whenever he's up against Stiltman, and Stiltman stilts into the air, and then suddenly Spider-Man's on his web, ascending up there to punch him. I was like, this is a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man moment. He shot his web and is just lifting himself into the air on it.
Some of the best animated episodes of the 90s show actually had Spider-Man like he would pull or he would cast a web. He would shoot out a web, and then you would see like his body working to push him forward instead of just him ascending to the skies.
Right. To me, the Vulture is the villain equivalent of Aunt May. He's the ancient geezer who refuses to kick the bucket.
What do you mean? Clearly, he's dead in this issue. It's right here on the page.
Doesn't he die in this issue?
Yeah. You have no idea. When I was reading this, I was like, yes!
I haven't read the issue where they explain how he comes back in years, but like
I read it recently. It's just as bad as you remember.
Yeah, like from what I recall, like it's just like he was so angry that he overcame his injury. So if he got sodden, whatever it was that like was making him on death's door, he was so angry that like he got cured. He just decided to live. Like
as anyone who's taken Workshop can attest, injuries in Workshop are never a good thing.
That's exactly what it was. He willed himself to. He decided to live.
Okay, I was like, am I remembering? And before I reread this issue, I thought he was dying because like he like contracted an illness or something, and like he got angry and his immune system like fought back. That's stupid, but that's like scientifically better than like his lungs that got sawed in half magically healed because he was so pissed at Blackie.
He regenerated his lower torso. Now, I think I said last time that I wouldn't be talking about Spider-Man Blue anymore, but I forgot that in Spider-Man Blue, they have the Kraven issue and the Vulture issues out of order. And the Kraven issue happens after the Vulture issue, so they do include this. They do recreate this story where Blackie Drago and actually the scene happens in the lunchroom where all of a sudden Toombs starts hacking his guts out. And Draco says, "You're not gonna make it, Toombs. Just tell me where we cut the Vulture things." And like you don't see like Draco like go fall and chuckle to himself, like, "Ha ha, I tricked you." Like he's actually brutally beaten by the guards. Like get away from Drago. And then like I think the next time you see him, he's already broken out with the wings. And I actually really 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 like how Spider-Man Blue did it, because Spider-Man fighting Drago and losing was juxtaposed with like a New Year's Eve party, I think, with Harry, Flash, Gwen, and Mary Jane. And it was like once it struck midnight, you see like Flash's face laughing that Peter's not there, and then you see Drago's face laughing because Spider-Man's like unconscious, and then you see like Spider-Man's body split out. So I would actually very very much recommend Spider-Man Blue just for that story, because I like the storytelling in that.
I have actually never read Spider-Man Blue, so I probably need to remedy that.
They reprinted it in a softback.
Trade paperback?
Soft paperback, yeah. And I think it's like cheaper than it used to be. I think it's like $17.99 or $14.99.
Okay. I may get a copy. I don't want to say that the Vulture is the first legacy character in Marvel, because we've had the Human Torch, but would you say, can you think of anyone? Is this the first legacy villain that we've had?
Possibly.
Legacy villain?
Like, you know, someone who's taken. That hasn't been said yet.
No, but when Red Skull first appeared and like.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Because the first Red Skull died and they had another Red Skull. Okay, yeah.
I don't know what you were talking about.
How do I know that and you don't?
We haven't gotten that far in the Mighty Shield yet.
Isn't it in like the first like 3 issues?
I think that the first Red Skull goes away after issue 4, and we haven't done that issue yet.
Are you talking about like, is the original Red Skull like done away with, or is Johann Schmidt like assumed to be dead or something?
No. Johann Schmidt was like retconned to be like the guy who like the original Red Skull was working for, like the original publication one. Like,
yeah, they retconned that Johann Schmidt was behind the scenes in the first Red Skull stories, but the first Red Skull, who I think is Red Skull, I think Johann Schmidt appears in Captain America Comics 7, but the Red Skull that appeared before that dies.
My mind! I'll read it myself. I actually would like to read some early Captain
America. But when I said it hadn't been done yet, I was thinking of the 50s Red Skull. At this point, they have not yet retconned that was a different Red Skull.
I'm thinking of I'm trying to think of not of like modern Marvel though, or like quote unquote like, you know, like Silver Age on. So
right. I was just trying to think of people from the Silver Age being, you know, passing on their identity to somebody else, and I couldn't really think of anyone.
Well, I mean, I'd honestly have to go through a list, and there's still a lot of Silver Age Marvel that I haven't read. I know like Fantastic Four, Daredevil, and Spider-Man, but like I haven't read enough Iron Man stories or, you know, Avengers.
Oh, Crimson Dynamo. There were a couple of Crimson. Okay. Well, suffice to say, it wasn't really being done that often. Pass on, you know, now.
Well, the universe is only a few years old.
Right, but nowadays, if you're going to say a villain's name, you have to figure out which villain you still have to figure out which villain you're talking about. I mean, which Beetle is this? Which, you know.
Which Venom, which Green Goblin, which
Right. Which one are we talking about? But here, that was not being done very much. And this is definitely the first Spider-Man villain to have a second identity.
Well, I think this is a really cool story for its time. I like the idea that not only is he's concentrating on fighting Kraven still, and he's sick, and then like there's he's like, what the heck? There's a new Vulture? Like I like the randomness of of the situation he's in.
And Adrian Toomes, he was getting old. His mind was starting to go. He couldn't remember his lines all the time. He was always having to take vacations from work. So they brought in this other younger black-haired Vulture to take his place, to entertain the children of a new generation. They weren't sure it was going to work, but the fact that Blackie Drago presented the character with such a different person, if he had tried to ape Adrian Toomes, then it totally would have flopped. But since he played it so differently, then I think it really succeeded, and that's what made the character last so long.
Well done. And he was playing the flute along too.
He was playing. I'd like a hat like that.
Awesome.
I don't know what we're referencing at all. Oh, okay.
Doctor Who. Sorry.
Got it. Okay.
The transition from the very first guy to play the Doctor, whenever they first replaced him and brought on a new actor, was a big gamble. But the first guy was old and decrepit and couldn't remember his lines anyway, so they had to do something. Anyways,
I wanted to see Adrian Toomes hear the TARDIS regenerate to Blackie Drago.
That would have been a better thing than this workshop accident.
Yes.
The doctors are like, what's wrong? He's like
stuff.
Padme Amidala. They're like he doesn't survive until he has the will to live. The doctor's like, he's lost the will to live.
Yeah,
there's nothing more we can do. He needs a smile.
I love it. I love it. And I don't like the Vulture. I don't like Adrian Toomes, and I don't like Blackie Drago much either. Just because nothing else. They basically, I don't want to say masturbate, but they basically have way too much fun with this power of flying around. And say, he's so strong and he's so fast. I mean, in the next issue, he knocks over a helicopter. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I don't buy that, but I like the douchiness of Drago, and I do kind of get a kick on how sort of stupid he is.
It's the Vulture is Spider-Man's first enemy.
According to a slip up by Solicits.
Actually, Stephen Wacker came on the CBR and said that he wrote that solicitation, and that was a mistake of his because when he was younger, he read the Vulture issue first or something. So
okay, well, if there's been a confession and an explanation, that's fine. I'll forgive it, I guess. But it's still really annoying that solicitations for issues have things like Spider-Man's going to fight his first enemy again, the Vulture.
Well, they don't say he's going to fight his first enemy, the Vulture. They say he's going to fight his first enemy, and then it says
the title is the Vulture. Or something.
Right. So and then I joked on one of the message boards. I was like, "Oh, cool! The Vulture and the Chameleon are totally going to team up."
As it should be.
Does that mean the vomiting Vulture is done away with now?
He hasn't been seen since Origin
that
of
one
the
story
Species.
He was in?
No, he was in Origin of the Species.
Oh, I didn't read that.
Oh yeah, I didn't read that either.
Origin of the Species had every single villain that was in Brand New Day, with the exception of Freak and maybe one or two other people. They made a very big deal because that was supposed to be the finale of Brand New Day, but then they had one issue left, so then that was the finale of Brand New Day. But everyone shows up for a panel or two. Spot, who was in that fill-in issue by Van Linte, he's webbed up in a jail cell, and a cop's like, "Boy, Spider-Man's mad." What's her face shows up? The one who I actually like, the webcam one. Screwball.
Screwball, yeah. It's not Speedball.
Which I love her as a villain, and I love her concept, but I hate how every time she shows up, they have the most clunky exposition to tell you her motivation.
Yeah, they always.
The characters always say, "Boy, you're only in it for the website hits, aren't you?" "Yup, I'm only in it for the website hits." "You don't really want to do this. You're just in it for internet fame." "I'm in it for internet fame." "Well, we sure established who you are for new readers."
I like her. I like the idea of her. I don't like the fact that she punked Spider-Man just because of parkour. That annoyed the crap out of me.
And
I was reading about Batroc the Leaper. He was admiring some parkour people in an issue of Captain America. It was weird, very strange.
Speaking of exposition, as I said before, this issue, all the things people used to say about air currents, downdrafts, wind velocity. Oh, okay, that's how he flies in 5 seconds. I actually like it, but it's clunky at best and pathetic at worst.
And it's all out loud.
Yeah.
People aren't thinking in this book. They are saying every word that comes into their head.
Once I reach that phone, he won't even make it to the first main road. He says to no one but himself, the guard.
Maybe Harry Osborn's onto something with this whole, like, talking out loud, like, and having conversations with himself. Like, maybe we shouldn't be all hard on old Harry.
Do we want to give any ribbing to the scene with the girls? Page 7.
Oh, well, that's only one girl.
Yeah, well, it's kind of Harry, too. No, I was thinking Mary Jane whenever I said it, but she's not in the scene. She comes in.
Maybe it's all we had to, but I think Gwen looks good in this because I think Gwen looks better without the headband because you see it so much, and she looks more all natural without it, which is weird to say.
We see Mary Jane in page 17. That's what I was thinking of.
I just imagine, like, this is, okay, we don't know how much time has passed since issue 47, but, like, she comes home, like, let's say this is the next day. Like, it probably isn't, but if it is, like, she comes home, she's like, I danced my ass off at that party, and Peter was still all over Mary Jane and all over that camera. That's it, and then she's like, oh, well, Peter must have noticed my dancing and then, like, called me. And she goes to her answering machine, Selena Kyle, like Batman Returns style, and then, like, gets mad that Peter didn't call her, wrecks her apartment, then, like, goes to her mirror. She's like, Peter will notice me now. And then, like, dramatic music as, like, she changes her hair and, like, the cats are hiding and you see, like,
the cats are
hiding. Hairbrushes and, like, silhouettes and shadows, and, like, Captain Stacy's, like, knocking on the door. Gwen? Dear, are you all right in there? Shut up, Father! I'm doing something important. And
I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I'm feeling a whole lot yummier.
And then, like, she's like, at last, Peter will see me. Hilda and Mary Jane will be together at last. Oh, say, Gwen, nice hairdo. Why, thanks, Mr. Parker. And then, like, goes to class. And then, like, she's thinking, that fool! Ha!
Yeah, she's still in Dicko mode. That's what it is.
She's in Dicko mode in her head. But, like, honestly, her changing her hair, like, okay. Can we all say that she's doing that it's like Mary Jane on purpose and she's doing it to get Peter to notice her? Like, is that the interpretation we're all going with, right?
Because she's like,
there's at least half the reason, and most likely mainly the reason.
Okay, yeah, because that's like, that is a sign that this girl is getting desperate at this point. She has been throwing herself at Peter for so long now, and it is not working. Like, now she's changing her image, which, like, okay, partially that's kind of sexist, like, all is for a boy, but hey, that's all Marvel Silver Age females did. It was all about the boys. They did not.
And also, in fairness, she's not a grown woman professional like Karen Page is. She's a college kid.
She's professional. She's a secretary.
I had to milk it somehow.
I do feel like it's possible that you could read it that she didn't realize what she was doing. She was appreciating Peter's compliment, and then whenever Harry says it's more like Mary Jane, she realizes that Peter might just be complimenting her because she looks like Mary Jane.
I think that she did it partially for Peter. I don't think she did it to be like Mary Jane, but I do think that she did it for Peter to notice her.
So her little, oh, that's right, hadn't thought of that, could either be, oh yeah, I did think of that, was doing it deliberately, or it could actually be she was legitimately caught off guard.
Well, to quote Donovan Morgan Grant during the great, battle of Did Flash Take When, she's saying this with, like, a smile on her face. Like, oh, I didn't notice.
Who's this Donovan Morgan?
And there is a worried expression on her face. It's not a complete smile. There's some consternation going on there.
There's some great storytelling here, because it's like on both Stan Lee and John Romita's part. In the midst of all this exposition and Vulture nonsense, there's actually a really good character bit with like it. They're really, I think I like the way they're doing this whole Gwen and Peter relationship, because it's not. I mean, it's kind of like padding it out with, like, will they, won't they? But it's also like, to me, because they're young, I can kind of get them taking a long time to get together. And I like the way that this is now, where she's trying to impress. She's at least hinted. You can infer that she's trying to impress them, but she didn't mean to, like, resemble her rival for his affections.
I think it's organic. I mean, she has her first appearance in issue 30, and they're really, really, really for real together around issue 60.
They have their first date in issue 53. Spoiler alert.
Okay, so that's 2 years.
And, like, even after their first dates, like, they're still...
They're not really, I would say that between issue 65 and 70, they get together. I don't know exactly.
They don't start going steady until, like, issue 60s. Like, cause like, he realizes that, like, she's the girl that he loves. Like, he says that in his sleep, and, like, I finally, yeah. Like, but before that, he was still, like, supposedly he was still dating MJ, like, because the dialogue was like, like that Betty and Veronica era that everyone like always talks about. Like, that was when it happened, like during those like issues between issue 53 and like issue 60 something. And I think it's more in character for Harry to put his foot in his mouth and not know what he's saying. But an alternative interpretation, which I'm not going with, is that Harry,
the Harry articles,
is that like Harry, who wants to date Gwen himself, like, is like saying this to like kind of put Peter in the doghouse, like, oh, you like Gwen's hair? Oh, Peter likes your hairdo. That's because it's his girlfriend's hairdo.
I think that this coming after the issue where he says between my Gwen and your Mary Jane we haven't made, I think that's actually a logical way to go about it. I would say that he probably did put his foot in his mouth, but when you consider the consecutive order of the issues, it makes a lot of sense if you were to do that on purpose.
And this is coming after all those interviews, which we talked about, like, last podcast last podcast was the reboot. But, when we talked about issue 47, that I see this all the time. This is like that often repeated story that's like gone down in legend that like when Mary Jane showed up, we tried to make Gwen more interesting. We told John to draw her this way and this way and this way, but we just couldn't make her more interesting than MJ no matter how hard we tried. And I think that this is one of the things, like, this is one of the ways they were doing it. Like, let's give Gwen Mary Jane's haircut, which I think in the very, very long run.
And then let's take MJ's haircut away from her, but that's way down the road.
Oh, yeah.
And let's write Mary Jane out of the book.
Yeah.
And
that's
for the
how we
heck
can make
of
Gwen
it,
more interesting than MJ. MJ just won't be there.
And for the heck of it, let's give Harry a Fu Manchu stash.
Oh my God!
Can you say it's the 70s? It's the 70s.
Not yet, though. Or is it the 70s by the time he gets the mustache? I don't think it is, but I think in the long run, though, like, people talk about, like, oh, look at Gwen from issue 30. She's so rough and, like, blah, 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 and so assertive. How did she become that crying little daddy's girl? And I think, like, this haircut is, like, one of those steps to take it that way, because the, like, Marvel method is the issues are plotted, they're drawn, and then, like, the dialogue's put in. And I think as, like, Stan's putting the dialogue in, he might change Gwen's dialogue to reflect on the art more. And if Gwen looks different because of the art, he's going to write her differently. Like, if that makes any sense. Like, I know this sounds stupid, but, like...
Well, also, the artist can say, they're saying these kinds of things here. And then Stan comes up with the exact phrasing. So it might actually have been John's idea, too.
Yeah, John Romita Sr. said, like, in that interview book I have, that he wouldn't just do the art. He and Stan were. It was very. He doesn't know very much about the Stan Lee Steve Ditko partnership himself. He really doesn't. But where he remembers him and Stan working together, it was very much a collaboration.
I know it sounds stupid to say that Gwen's personality changed because they gave her a haircut, but I honestly think that, like...
No, it's true.
I honestly think that it's partially true because, like, when she looks different, when you're dialoguing this stuff and you're drawing her, you do it to reflect the art, and I think it's partially what changed her personality. I also think that having her father showed up changed her personality a lot, too, but...
Yeah. Well, whenever she's drawn angular with stark eyebrows and always scowling at Peter, she's going to be written as a bitch. And when she's drawn softer with nicer curves on her face and smiling at Peter, she's going to be written as a nicer, softer girl. Unfortunately, the only kinds of nice, soft girls that Stanley knows how to write are... I guess we'll find out that as we keep on going.
Yeah, whimpering blondes.
Yeah, whimpering blondes.
Well,
whimpering her.
I mean, I think the middle panel at the bottom of page 7. Oh, that's right. I hadn't thought of that. I think that's like Gwen like it's begun. It's her turning into like the simpering. What is it? There's one page. This one comic where like it's the splash page is literally Gwen crying in front of you. With like her eyes closed and her hands like together, like I think this is like the very much beginning to that, and it's gotten a head start.
It's an evolution, and like because once her father shows up, it also he serves a lot of narrative purposes, but a big one that he serves is he's someone that Gwen can air her grievances to. And when a girl is airing grievances to her father, it becomes like it makes her into the crying daddy's girl baby. Because right now, And since issue 30, who's going to air her grievances to? Is she going to go up to Flash Thompson and say, oh, Peter didn't talk to me at the space exhibit? Is she going to go up to Harry Osborn, who at this point she's also dating, saying, oh, Harry, man who I'm dating, why isn't your roommate, liking my new hairdo? Not Professor Warren, she doesn't have a relationship with Aunt May at this point. And despite, words to the contrary by, revisionists, her and Mary Jane are virtually strangers who have the same group of friends. So it's until once Captain Stacy comes on, it's instead of this where we can guess is Gwen doing this for her haircut, and why is Gwen dancing here, is she trying to get Peter jealous? She actually has someone to say this stuff to, oh daddy, it's so horrible. So him coming on, that goes a big step to changing her character.
And we're going to see you mentioned how Gwen and Mary Jane are still kind of strangers at this point.
I was about to say I would agree with that until next issue.
Next issue, actually, it comes up as a point.
All I'm going to say before we get to next issue is, if you're going to say that, after next issue, they're not virtually strangers anymore, I'm calling baloney on it because of the way that it went down, but
yeah,
we'll get there.
Okay, before we get to the Mary Jane scene, because that's a little bit of insanity, there are a couple of, nitpicks I had in the story.
Nitpicks? What?
On page 14, okay, so the Vulture snags Spider-Man and keeps on going. He says, that clown's no weakling. He's hauling me off as if I'm weightless. He's not using any strength here whatsoever. He's not lifting Spider-Man with his arms. Spider-Man snags his legs, and the Vulture just keeps on going. The only thing it's not the Vulture's strength, it's the power of his flying suit and maybe his momentum that, is keeping him going. So I just had to, Spider-Man, Peter Parker's a science major.
Maybe they should have given that scholarship to Jason Ionello.
maybe, but it's momentum here, not the Vulture's strength. My favorite page, not really my favorite page, but for the sakes of sick humor, my favorite page in this entire book is page 16. Whenever the Vulture comes up behind Spider-Man and wraps his legs around him, so we have Spider-Man and the Vulture crotch the whole time, because it wouldn't be a Vulture story without some really strange sexual pose between Spider-Man and the Vulture.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I just think it's really, really funny.
And it wouldn't be a Made Spider-Man Classics episode without John making some strange sexual joke.
Okay, you know what, though? The first sexual joke on this show was Bertoni pointing out the first Vulture weird sexual pose. I'm just saying.
I thought that the first joke was Uncle Ben waking Peter up.
On the first page of the comic book on the first appearance of Spider-Man.
Yeah, didn't you tell me that, John?
Right, it was because you were all tentative when you were saying, you're I don't want to be too weird, but he's stroking his nephew's arm here, and talking about wrestling with him. And I remember that now. That was the beginning of the bad humor. Yes,
his 15-year-old nephew.
I didn't start it, is all I'm saying. I didn't start the fire, but I keep on.
Start the retcons.
Oh God.
Or the sexy jokes.
Speaking of sexy, Mary Jane walks into page 17.
Yeah, I hope she didn't hurt her head too badly when she walked into it.
Right.
Somewhere Flash Thompson's laughing.
I love her dialogue in this entire thing. Here's his pad now, and not an oxygen tent in sight. Surprise, Harry boy! We brought goodies, giggles, and grins for your germ-riddled roommate. The alliteration is Bruce Timm actually said in the quote once when he did a story, I think with Eric Larson actually, called it was a Fantastic Four story from Marvel, and the idea of it was that they were going to take Kirby's the Kirby run of Fantastic Four and recreate it to tell an untold tale and try to get it as best of the era as they could. And a lot of co-writers came on, and Bruce Timm said that they would make him alliterate all the time. He says that if you look at the issues, he really doesn't alliterate all that much. Well, I'm seeing it here. There's a lot of that in the general caption in the credits and in Mary Jane's drug-induced dialogue. I think that in the 60s, I think it probably died off in the late 60s, early 70s, but in 1966 right now, it's pretty rapid fire.
Aunt May showing up at Peter's house. Okay, and Aunt Anna, tagging along, you don't need to worry. I'm sure Peter just, you can tell that, the whole car right there, Aunt Anna's Aunt May, You are being ridiculous. The boy moved out. I am your roommate now. Chill out. He is a grown-ass man. And like
Hear that, May? I told you not to worry so.
Yeah. Gosh darn it.
In the past, though, she's sort of been like an enabler. But in this issue and the next issue, Aunt Anna starts saying, you know what, May, you need to calm the fuck down.
She must do this off. Like, this is not her first visit to Peter Parker's pad, probably. I mean, she must, like... I mean, I joked on another podcast that she calls Harry all the time, probably, to make sure that, like, you know, Peter, like, you know, use clean towels after he took a shower, or he'll like, get a rash, or, like, you know, if Peter doesn't put his socks on just right, he'll break his toe and, like, bleed to death in the middle of the apartment, and...
So we leave Spider-Man prone, broken, lying in the snow on a skyscraper rooftop as the Vulture flies away with his wings.
Broken and done. Away.
Yeah.
And we really are led to believe that Adrian Toomes is dead in this story, but even though he's dead, he will be back in 19 issues. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't you worry, all you Adrian Toomes fans.
Well, that's the other thing. Him leaving Spider-Man broken like that. It's like, Craven did the same thing last issue. Oh, Spider-Man knocked down. Well, I'm going to turn around before he obviously stands up and assume that I've defeated Spider-Man forever and walk away and talk like, that would be like, if I walk up to somebody in a schoolyard, I push them down, they landed on their butt, and I turned around before they had a chance to stand up, and I walked away saying, I've defeated them at last. Like, check to make sure that the guy's dead. He's flying away like, well, Spider-Man fell down, and that's the end of that.
I'm going to nitpick it next episode, but by the internal story logic, Spider-Man should have died here. And I'll talk about that next time.
It's also the fact that they make a lot of references that his superhuman strength saves him a lot of times from surviving falls and blows and stuff.
Well, for Christ's sakes, check.
He really should check.
Check. He's like, oh, he must be fly. Like, come down there and like use your like sharp wings to cut his head off, snap his neck, choke him, or like while he's unconscious, drop him from an even greater height into the ocean, or like into a smokestack or something, so they could discover his skeleton in like, you know, a '90s comic.
What are you talking about?
So, to wrap up this issue, our ads this month, we have a man asking us on the inside cover if we're shamed by our English. No. This is one of a series of ads that are led by a big old bold-faced question. And Lily and I like to tease each other about these questions. Are you shamed by your English? Are you too skinny? Then an ad for more Marvel Masterpieces, now on sale, featuring Marvel Tales 8, which reprints Amazing Spider-Man 13 with Mysterio. Kind of significant after last episode.
Is that the one where like he's tricked into thinking that he's going crazy?
No, this is the first Mysterio, where
okay.
I guess there was a little bit of that plot, but not nearly as much as they did in the later issue, 24, I think. Also, the Human Torch from Strange Tales, the Wasp from Tales to Astonish, and Thor from Journey into Mystery have stories reprinted in that book. Thor 139 is called To Die Like a God, and it kind of wraps up Thor's first story post Jane Foster. A couple issues back, she had come to Asgard to take some trials to see if she was worthy of Thor, and she failed utterly. And Thor,
I thought that already happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, that happened a few issues back. This is like the wrapping up of the story that started there, because Thor immediately decided that Sif was a pretty tasty-looking piece, so they went off having adventures with Ulick the Troll, and those are wrapping up in this issue. There's also Marvel Collector's Item Classics, issue 8, that was in last month's ad. After that, we have a page with our favorite nuclear submarine toy, and a set of joke cards.
Joke cards, huh?
Yeah. Then you can win prizes or cash by selling grit, be a super spy with a spy pen, and be a master of karate.
Is the spy pen like the one from GoldenEye?
I really want it to be.
But it's being sold in a Marvel comic from the 1960s, so I really don't think it is.
See through walls, with quotes around C, like Solo and Ilya and the man from U.N.C.L.E. And let's see, then we have a couple of hodgepodge ads, including a rather large ad on one of the pages for New Mexico. This, New Mexico is cool.
These are random ads.
Yeah. But this next page of ads made me smile. It is a Johnson Smith novelty ad. Now, for those of you listening to me over on Golden Age Superman, you will know Johnson Smith novelty ads have been running in comics since Action Comics #1, possibly before. So it amused me to see them still going strong here 30 years later. And one of the bits of junk you could get was a gasoline-burning miniature jet engine to attach to your goat. But that would be funny. Your boat, car, or plane model kit. So yeah, giving children things to burn gasoline with, that's always fun. The Marvel Bullpen Bulletin page brings us a profound potpourri of perplexing pronouncements and preposterous philosophy, all portending practically nothing. There is no mighty Marvel checklist in this edition. They say they decided to remove it and to let them know if it's missed. And although it does come back next month, they actually start being a lot more fluctuational about whether or not they're going to include the checklist. The days of always having one every month are over. There is an item about Irving Forbush, and do you really want to know more about him or just let him remain a joke? And evidently Marvel's so far lighthearted banter about Brand Ek is getting some rather personal backlash in the DC comics.
It begins.
Yes. Readers are getting rather upset because DC is taking things personally and getting personal in their insults back. So Stan rather magnanimously responds by saying that there are plenty of talented people working for the various other comics companies. Many of those once worked for Marvel or may work for Marvel in the future, and that everything is intended to be good-natured, and he even gives apologies in case feelings were genuinely hurt.
I honestly think that DC did that as a stunt. I don't think they were really offended because of the stories I heard with the creators all like going out to eat in between writing stories.
Oh yeah, with the editors all friends and stuff?
Julius Schwartz and those kind of guys palling around with Stan Lee.
That's possible. Julius Schwartz was later though, right? That was 70s?
Well, he came in at the end of the 60s.
Okay. It might be that they get to that point but haven't gotten there yet, or they may already be there. I don't really know.
Wasn't it Julius Schwartz who told Stan who told Martin Goodwin or someone that Fantastic Four was doing good? Or am I confusing him with someone else?
No, that was no. I know what you're talking about. That was Martin somebody. Who's
Martin Goodman, but Martin Goodman was having golf with a DC guy, and I think it was Julius Schwartz because
Talking about
Julius
Teen
Schwartz
Titans
didn't come in.
You mean, right?
Julius Schwartz. I think Julius Schwartz was in DC about a decade before he got really big in the 70s.
Because there was even a joke on that DC documentary that was at Comic-Con in 2010 where I think it's Julius Schwartz, he jokes, he's yeah, I told them that, Justice League was doing really, really good. So then Marvel, decided to pattern our success, and do a team book, and they did Fantastic Four. So not only did I save DC, but I also created Marvel Comics as well, technically. And that got a big laugh out of the audience.
Regenerated to joke itself.
Yeah, then he regenerated. And actually, on the subject of the Marvel versus DC thing, I think it's different now because a lot of people who write for Marvel have written for DC and vice versa. Now, it's a more clear distinction.
Yeah, Ed Brubaker was on DC for a while before he got big at Marvel.
And yeah, I mean, the companies are not going to do anything corporately joined anymore. I think the days of crossovers are either behind us or in the distant future. But
I do not. Sorry, go ahead.
You're exclusively for one company or the other, and the two do not really have anything to do with each other anymore.
I really don't think that they're going to stop doing crossovers. I think that this is regime right now. This regime, however long it will be finite, and I think that sooner or later there will be the time where we'll see DC and Marvel crossovers. I mean, as I look at my DC Marvel crossover classics Volume 2 charade that I got from Comic-Con, I don't think permanently never come back again. I really don't.
Well, there was nothing specifically about Spidey in this month's Bullpen Bulletin, but I thought that those tidbits were interesting. There is then a page of ads for Marvel clothes and stationery and a new line of 12x16 posters to cover your walls. And after that is the Spider's Web, our letter column, where Amazing Spider-Man 44 and 45 are being praised for the return of the Lizard. Did you guys have anything to say in here about these?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, somebody wrote a letter about Mary Jane. It's actually a girl named Mary Ellen, if that isn't her real name. Like, dear Stan and John, I love you. I just recently been awakened to the muchly marvelous Marvel masterpieces and have become something of a spidery campus collector. My favorite college boys, which like makes me think that she's like Gwen Stacy, like, you know, having all those boys. Come on, Mary Ellen. who's gonna take our place with you? Oh, my favorite college boy. Why did I read boys? I must be projecting. Sorry. Okay, Mary Ellen.
It's one favorite college boy amongst other college boys.
Oh, okay. Yes. So Mary Ellen is a skank. Or, you know, she's like probably like, you know, 50 years old right now or something, like listening to this podcast. Like, I was the belle of the ball, wasn't I? Yeah, I had it going on. I was a pussycat doll. Anyway, send me all the old, new, and in-between Spidey issues. Yeah, I'm dropping the voice because it's easier. I even wrote a Spidey feature for our campus paper. They're a slow bunch here. Is she insulting them?
I believe so.
I think they mean slow as in business for the paper.
They're a slow bunch here, but sure. And we'll make the big time soon as far as Marvel's concerned. Enough of that. Yeah, enough of like insulting my alma mater. I love the new Peter Parker Tigers, and so do all of Cabrini's Marvel converts, and most everybody except maybe Irving Forbish. Now, I have to make an urgent request. Really? Do you have to make Mary Jane so shallow, so too hip? Jazzy Johnny has made her a tribute to comic art, and aside from the fact that I'm a redhead myself, I think she's the epitome of miraculously sensational, inexpressionable wonders. Please, for Pete's sake, for my sake, and all of Marvel's fans' sake, don't turn Mary Jane into an ick! I refuse to believe a redhead could be so dumb as to pass up a bonus like Petey. For crying out loud, Pete has to get some satisfaction someday.
Bow chicka bow wow.
I like this girl.
Pete's never gonna get no satisfaction. You know, of course, I'll probably still love all you Marvel Masters no matter what you do, since it's all above and beyond the call of duty. I shall continue to anxiously await the arrival of my next Spidey-ish in the mail and turn the town upside down buying your other mags. Well, may Marvel's meteoric... Yeah, but what's the next word?
Maharajas.
You do that last sentence.
Well, may Marvel's meteoric Maharajas of mental motivation march on. Forever, even.
I gotta say, I am getting really tired of the alliteration. It's getting so...
Well, that's Mary Ellen. That's not even Stan. Unless that is Stan. I could see Stan like role-playing, like, Flo, dictate a letter for me. This time I'm going to be a college girl. Stan, you're running out of characters. Oh, nonsense, Flo. They're gonna know it's you. You're doing too much alliteration. Oh, the fans will never suspect. I'll blame it on Irving Forbush or our distinguished competition, Bran Eck.
Speaking of Webster strapping to a chair and like just like never mind.
Speaking of Stan, you know, he's either answering a letter or talking to himself. And by the way, this girl leaves her address at she leaves her dorm room number.
Yeah,
and like her college, like her dorm room number. Like people are gonna like come up and like she's a you don't do that nowadays. Like I'm a college girl. Here's my dorm room number. Oh well, come up and yeah, don't come up and like break in and attack me or any. I'm trying to be really delicate with how I joke about that because that is like a serious thing. But like. I hope that's a secure campus. But Stan replies either to himself or to, you know, this girl who's obviously real. Loved your letter, Marilyn. The fact that you promised to continue buying our mags hit us right where we live, in our wallets. As for MJ, we don't plan to turn her into an ick. Honest. We just depict her as we see her. And hope you're getting an accurate portrayal. But no matter how her role in Spidey's life turns out, redheads, still turn us on, lady. Especially carrot tops like you. And Stan either just flirted with a college girl or flirted with himself.
The problem is that carrot tops are green.
I imagine that girl to be like I imagine her to like resemble Mary Jane.
Yes, but they're not saying the top of a carrot. Carrot tops means like the top of you is like the color.
They're just
of a
saying
carrot.
Having married a redhead, the whole carrot top thing is a source of humor because it's not really a very good nickname.
Right, but Carrot Top, like, what color are carrots? They're orange. You're not saying the top of a carrot, which is green when you're saying Carrot Top. You're saying the top.
Really?
You're
Seriously
saying.
talking about
Right, whenever you
this?
talk about your box tops, are you talking about tops that are box shaped, or are you talking about the tops of boxes?
Oh, this is different, and you know it. The top, a carrot is orange. Calling the top of somebody's head a carrot is therefore calling the top of their head orange.
Just saying, there is room for disagreement here.
There's room for disagreement, but there's also room for me to disagree with your disagreement.
We also have Don Posniak. He suggests that Pete date Gwen rather than MJ. And then he catches a big typo that we missed where Spider-Man refers to the lizard as the Scorpion by mistake in issue 44.
She'll fix that for me.
Sorry, yeah.
They probably
I'm
fixed
doing it.
Don's Essential.
Robert Curley wonders if he's the only 6th grader reading comics since they're always talking about their high school and college readers. John Stillman, who, by the way, his name is spelled correctly, read one of the Lancer paperback collections of Spider-Man that I said were crap, but he really liked it, and he suggested they bind the first 40 issues into a collector's edition set. 40 years later, this happens.
And he gets no credit. The omnibus was my idea. And then Stan Lee leads him to the Rancor pit.
Russell Zoller writes a letter about how awesome Marvel is in the Civil Rights Department. Robert Schneider tells us that the notes Spidey uses in issue 45 to heal Dr. Connors were burned up in issue 6. So how did he use them?
Wait a second. Wait. Like when they meant that they were awesome in the Civil Rights Department, did that mean like the Civil Rights Movement read Marvel Comics, or they thought that the Marvel Comics were
The way Marvel Comics is treating various races.
Well, Robertson hasn't appeared yet, so like, how are there any examples I can go off that?
Blackie Drago, like his name's Black.
It's not exactly positive.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, but I mean, like, he killed the Vulture. That's kind of cool.
That's kind of admirable.
He says, let's see, you are true Americans. I'm from Mississippi, and there are many prejudiced people down here, but I'd like to tell you now that I'm not one of them. I am not a Mississippian or a rebel or a Southerner, but an American. And I'll fight and die for my belief that a man is a man, no matter his race, color, creed, or whatever they come up with next. You have backed this up to the hilt, and I don't think you've been congratulated enough for it. So that's why I'm thanking you. It's people like you who just might save this crazy mixed-up world. You and your mags have my thanks and approval for what it's worth.
That's very apropos. I really feel like I'm character.
Why is he writing that to Spider-Man?
I don't know. He does mention some other he says I've been behind Spider-Man all the time. He may have addressed it to Spider-Man. He says before he finishes, I better stop or I'll have Spidey crying. So there is some Spider-Man stuff in the letter, but it's not really his main point.
Well, I don't really know. At this time in the other titles, has any of that been brought up? I mean, in X-Men or anything?
I'm trying to think now because you're right. There's not really.
This is like a letter from the future or something.
Yeah, I don't know of anything that they have done that's really that significant in the equal rights issue. I can't think of a single non-white character in any of the comics at this point. Black Panther.
We'll get Robbie in 2 to 3 issues.
Black Panther's in Fantastic Four.
Robbie's sneaking up behind Ned Leeds and was it Ned and Betty or Ned and Foswell?
It was. I think it was Ned and Foswell. He's like, I'll call the city editor Robertson. I've been here the whole time.
We were talking about that earlier this week. Like, Robbie just like appears behind.
We have seen occasional non-white characters just in the background or like on campus or something, but we really haven't. I don't know. I don't know what he was talking about. He just said it was cool, although I think he might be dead now.
That's the civil rights movement, occasional non-white characters on campus in the background.
That's good.
And finally, William Toivanen writes that it really takes intestinal fortitude to do the things that you do with your plots, which to me sounds like it might be gearing up for some insults, but he goes on to write some rather eloquent praise of the efforts from Marvel. So good on you, William, if you're listening out there. I Facebook messaged him.
No, really.
And aside from ads for stopping baldness, making yourself astronaut tough, and going to art school, that wraps this issue. Next issue. Hey, here's a twist. Due to the unusually dramatic ending of this month's Spidey Spectacular, we feel that any advance information we could give you about next month's ish might lessen the suspense. So here's another mighty Marvel first. For the very first time, we won't tell you a single thing about Spider-Man number 49, except this one earth-shattering thought. If it's humanly possible, buy it. We promise you won't be sorry. Nuff said.
AKA, we haven't plotted it yet. And B, this is the first time we're telling you absolutely nothing about the issue. Are you kidding? That's every other next issue box.
It definitely was before Ramita came on. But yeah, I guess that wraps us up for this episode. Before we go, why don't we run down some of the things that we do on the internet for the people out there? Dawn, you want to go through your list?
Well, obviously I don't have to mention this show because you're listening to it. I review the Amazing Spider-Man title currently for the Spider-Man Crawl Space whenever that comes out. I am a co-host on the Batman Universe Comic Cast. You can find it on the BatmanUniverse.net, along with Josh and as of this recording, you probably will hear John. And I am also a co-host on the soon-to-be returning Clone Saga Chronicles podcast with Josh and Zach Spidey. So listen to me and read me there.
And Josh, your turn.
I do a podcast, from orange to rainbow. It's a Goldfish Crackers podcast where I talk about the evolution of Pepperidge Farm's Goldfish crackers, which they used to come in just orange. Now they have the rainbow flavors. I do From Socks to Sandals. It's a footwear podcast about the different types of footwear that people do. There's a very good photo blog that goes along with it of different people wearing like different kinds of sandals and different kinds of socks. Last month was Crazy Sock Month, where like there was the rainbow socks or the fluorescent socks from iCarly. I also own several 5-star restaurants, and I'm going to be brief because there's a lot of things that I do that are like kind of on hiatus because around 2009 I was like, oh my god, the internet's cool and I don't work a lot, so let me do all these things. And then I started working a lot and the internet wasn't as cool, but I'm a staff member on Spider-Man Crawl Space, where I do a series of posts. I'm currently going through the history. If you miss me ranting about Betty Brant on here, there's plenty of Betty Brant hate blogs on Crawl Space, and I'm currently chronicling her relationship with Flash Thompson. By the time this is out, I'll probably be done with that series because I'm almost done. As I'm recording this, I'm on the Peter David Friendly Neighborhood issues, where if you thought that things got rough with Liz and Betty, where do you see who Betty's rival is now? She turns into spiders and crawls up Betty's legs while she's on the toilet. Yeah, that actually happened. I am a staff member on the Batman Universe, and I'm on some of their commentaries and podcasts. I will be moving from the Comic Cast for reboot reasons and doing other stuff on the site, but I've been with them since the end of 2008. They're a motley crew. Clone Saga Chronicles. I'm a staff member on SpideyDude.com, and I help Zach with the Clone Saga Chronicles podcast, which hopefully by the time you're hearing this, SpideyDude.com has gotten its facelift, and you should be listening to new episodes of that podcast again. There's other podcasts and other blog stuff, but because they're not coming out regularly, I don't feel it's right to pimp them right now, so I'll do it in a future episode if I have something to pimp.
All right. And I am becoming increasingly involved with various projects. First, my solo show, Golden Age Superman, is continuing to explore the early adventures of the Man of Steel, though I've had to move from weekly to more like once or twice a month, just because of the sheer amount of content each month in the era I'm covering. Superman was very popular, and trying to research a month's worth every week was killing me. So that's over at goldenagesuperman.libsyn.com. Teenage Wasteland and Ultimate Spider-Man podcast is still slowly but surely covering the Brian Michael Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man series at teenagewasteland133.libsyn.com. I am co-hosting The Mighty Shield, a Captain America podcast with J. David Weeder. It used to be Michael Kaiser. You've heard me mention him before, but he had to back out of podcasting, so David graciously stepped up to the plate, and we were having fun over there. We are covering all adventures of Captain America from the Golden Age, Silver Age, and with the latest episode, the modern books as well. So look for that at www.themightyshield.com. And don't forget the "the" in that address. I have recently joined David Weeder and Mike Bailey at Xavier's podcast for Gifted Youngsters, where every other Friday we take a look at an issue of the original series of the X-Men. And as Don said, I am now the new guy on the Batman Universe comic cast, taking a look at the new 52 Batman books every other week. You can also
and knowing Dustin, 6 of your episodes will be out by the time this comes out.
You can also catch my columns on Superman in the New 52 at simplysupermanbatman.wordpress.com and on Batman in the New 52 at thebatmanuniverse.net. All the advertisements out of the way. If you want to write to the show, you can do so by sending an email to amazingspidermanclassics@gmail.com, and we will read and respond to your thoughts on the issues or what we've said about them here on the air. If you want to speak to us more informally, come join us on Facebook at facebook.com/amazingspidermanclassics. Like that page and post whatever you like about the show or about Spider-Man. There's also a link to that page on the show's website at amazingspiderman.libsyn.com, where you can download episodes or comment on them. Another place to do that is at www.spidermancrawlspace.com, a friend of the show and excellent site for all things Spider-Man, including writings and ramblings of our two buddies here, Don and Josh. And finally, you can subscribe to the show through iTunes. Pull down old episodes from there, and if that is your preferred method of getting this podcast, I invite and request you to leave us a review telling others what you think of our efforts here. And with that, my name is John Wilson.
TBU style, you got Josh.
This is Don.
And thank you for listening to Amazing Spider-Man Classics in association with SpidermanCrawlspace.com. Good night.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward. To him, life is a great big hang-up. Wherever there's a hang-up, you'll find the Spider-Man.
And then who? Oh my God, this better fucking be important. Okay, you know what? Hold on.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
I had written, and then Adrian Toomes were generated into Blackie Drago, so they could keep the Vulture Who TV series going. So yeah, Chris Johnson posts, which led to the two vultures where they met.
Oh, Facebook.
Yeah, the two vultures.